All right, ladies and gentlemen, back to David Knight live in studio.
All right, and that's Alex Jones, and he's going to be joining us with a further report after the break on this Tuesday, June 27th, 2017. I'm here in the studio, and of course we have this breaking CNN story, essentially leading us to the brink of war with Russia so that they can get higher ratings. Very cynical manipulation. We all know Operation Mockingbird. Well, folks, it is full on. And I think one of the most interesting things, we're going to play James O'Keefe's revelations. And of course, in the last couple of days, we talked about this yesterday, this fake story that broke down with CNN. Now, 3 people have been fired or have left, depending on how you view this from CNN. It's had massive repercussions, even within CNN itself. We've had Brian Stelter, who was told by Jeff Zuckerberg, you know, they basically stonewalled this. And now we have Jeff Zuckerberg, of course, saying viewers trust CNN more than ever. I guess that's a relative. I guess that's a relative thing. I never trusted them. You should never trust any news source. You should look at it, think for yourself. And the amazing thing about all this is how silent the mainstream media is. Absolutely no news on it. But we're going to have that news, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
The supporters of InfoWars, not just here in the U.S., but around the world, are the cutting-edge vanguard of the reawakening of the sleeping giant that is human liberty. Again, I want to thank you all humbly for fighting the globalists. I want to thank you for your financial support. You're the reasons we're still here and growing in the face of an unprecedented onslaught. That's why this July 4th, we're having some of the biggest sales ever. We have store-wide free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com through July 4th. And on top of that, we have savings as much as 40% off best-selling items. And we're talking about things you need: a wide spectrum of high-quality, non-GMO heirloom seeds, high-quality storable foods, and amazing, groundbreaking supplements and nutraceuticals. Our incredible nootropic Brain Force Plus, 30% off, and now with 20% more in each bottle. Super Mel Vitality, sold out for months. Concentrated herbs that have absolutely changed my life and so many others, 30% off as well. Deep Earth Pure Iodine X2, now back in stock, 30% off. Z-Shield, our newest product out of the gates, 30% off because it's so amazing and I want you to try it. Emmerich Essentials Outdoor Special. We're talking our non-nano zinc, incredibly concentrated, high-powered sunscreen, along with Emmerich's Essentials Bug Spray that's totally organic and natural and works way better than chemical brands I've personally used. On that particular special at 40% off, if you get the additional auto ship 10% off, we're talking about a loss leader this July 4th, celebrating our republic, celebrating worldwide freedom, and celebrating returning America to its place in the world as a true shining city on a hill where people want to come here to celebrate free market and an open society, not to celebrate a globalist, politically correct cesspool of infighting and mind control. We have the new product at InfoWarsLife.com, BioTrue Selenium.
We've had so many requests over the years for selenium, and just recently we were able to source a certified organic bioavailable selenium from mustard seed extract. When you take selenium in the body, it actually benefits the detoxification systems in your body. It helps balance the thyroid gland. It helps detoxify.
Selenium is another one of those absolute must-haves.
The highest concentration of selenium is in the thyroid gland, but it's actually used all over the body. As a matter of fact, there's 25 genes in the body that are directly dependent upon selenium. So it really is a all-around nutrient that everybody really needs.
I'm taking it now every day. This is so key. BioTrue Selenium is the product, the best selenium that we could bring you. We believe it's the best out there at a very, very low price. Exclusively available at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
I know you deceived me, now here's a surprise.
There's a lot to be thankful for right now. We've seen the Supreme Court 9-0 back up President Trump and override activist Ninth and Fourth Circuit courts that engaged in judicial tyranny by the very definition, just declaring the law null and void a law that 5-year-olds could easily understand. The Constitution applies to U.S. citizens, and the president has the right to block dangerous individuals from any nation he chooses. The law is cut and dry. That's a big victory because it reverses a tide of judicial tyranny, of judicial activism, of judicial berserking that has seen the Ninth Circuit and others rule that you can't wear American flags in public schools in California because they're hurtful to others. That is the level of judicial activism we're talking about. And that ties in with Eric Trump and the Huffington Post and others with straight faces reporting on his short haircut on the sides, kind of an aviator-style haircut that you see soccer players and others with, trying to tie it together with Hitler and other, quote, white nationalists. Now, those of us that aren't completely mentally ill laugh at that. But you have to understand, they're dumbing the political currency down with the public to the point where people aren't aware of major policies, where people aren't aware of geopolitical systems. All they're aware of is surface issues. And this is the purest form of racism that we're talking about. And by racism, I mean tribalism. They are dumbing it down to the fact that he has blonde hair, and the fact that he has straight hair, and the fact that he has blue eyes, and the fact that he is a WASP. It doesn't matter if the family marries into Orthodox Jews. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump got awards from the NAACP and Jesse Jackson for hiring record numbers of blacks and putting them in positions of authority when they did a good job. That's how it promotes anybody. None of that history matters. None of it means anything. Because in the final equation, it's about dumbing the debate down so the public is so down in the weeds, obsessed over what color somebody is or racial code words. They don't care that big mega central banks for the last decade have shut down loaning to small businesses and to individuals. They don't then worry about the deindustrialization. They don't worry about Lloyd Blankfein of Goldman Sachs making jokes about how China has a better infrastructure than us while he sits there and uses the U.S. military to project power globally. Now, all of that said, Trump is in a prime position to make the Democrats a coastal sub-party that is basically, after 240 plus years, non-existent. There will be other parties that emerge, like we've seen with UKIP in Europe and other areas of the world. But that said, the Republicans now are basically in control of most of the states, most of the legislatures, most of the governorships, the House, the Senate, the executive, and the judicial. He has not just a trifecta over the three branches of government, but we have, as a populist uprising, a trifecta throughout the heartland and the rest of the producing nation. And we also see numbers and statistics coming in where, quote, minorities, who are really the majority, want the birthright of private property, prosperity, and a Second Amendment. They know America's not perfect, it's had its problems, but they want to focus on the positive because of the internet and because of travel, and because of the military. A lot of people have been around the world and they realize America's got its problems, but it's the best house in a bad neighborhood. Because this planet is going into major crises. We need to come together if we've got any shot at the future. Come together around real policies, real prosperity, real ideas, instead of social distortion, globalist think tank propaganda that's produced by the big foundations and then passed out through the CIA, through other agencies, and through MSM. This is weaponized. It's declassified. It's a fact. I mean, people are saying that James O'Keefe has now killed CNN. And I agree. You can say this is one of the final nails in the coffin. O'Keefe's amazing. I'm not taking away from O'Keefe, but it's been all of us, that's you, the listeners, exposing CNN, exposing it as a terrorist organization, exposing it as a group that supports ISIS and Al-Qaeda and the Arab Spring, that overall have really just exposed it as the anti-human, anti-American organization it is. But CNN, more than anybody, has killed themselves. And they are the bellwether of the globalist sinking ship, where the propaganda and the lies just don't work anymore. When people do watch it almost like looking back at Sodom and Gomorrah. Watch out, you might turn into a tower of salt. But the reason I raise that is the video's up on Infowars.com. It's on PrisonPlanet.com. It's obviously on DrudgeReport.com. It's all over Project Veritas' site. And it's another Death Star level explosion to the globalists, another huge defeat where there's the producer, O'Keefe's got more coming out soon, bragging on hidden video about how they lie to the public, and how they scam the public, and how they deceive, and how they don't have proof of the Russian narrative, and the fact that he doesn't even really think it's fair. But he's still there basically bragging about it because he's in that position of power. And that's what these people get off on, is keeping you in their box, keeping you in their paradigm, not seeing your mind open up and accelerate past even their intellect. They want to suppress and control the narrative and basically run humanity in a ditch. They're the most selfish, greedy, hateful people you can imagine. I mean, we have CNN's own reporters caught over and over again every few days putting out fake stories that are verifiable. Like the reporters that sit there and say that Trump never went and saw Scalise in the hospital and stuff like that. And then nobody even gets in trouble when they get caught lying over and over and over and over again in the headlines because they think you're not paying attention. I go back to Gruber. That's why they do that. Jonathan Gruber said, thank God the public doesn't pay attention. And I see them doing this to myself and others with these deceptive headlines where what you see in the headline is not actually in the article. And again, I know I'm telling you things that you already know. The key to this is we are reaching the flashpoint, critical tipping point moment. And the globalists know this. And so everybody has to be on their toes and focused because the globalists and these combines realize that their whole planetary program is going under because they themselves mismanaged it. They themselves set it up to consolidate wealth and make people poor and thought they could keep that in the dark. Well, of course they can't keep it in the dark with the type of surveillance grids and systems that are two-way streets. So now we have to be in maximum vigilance mode and maximum activity mode in the animating contest of liberty, which is exciting and invigorating and empowering, and realize in this critical time, the empire is going to strike back. They're going to strike back in a big way, and we should all be conscious of it. And now I get to the negative news. But it's positive that we're here and able to cover it and to get ahead of it. I said last week, the only way that the Trump Americana agenda is going to get derailed is going to be from the inside. Again, not saying something everybody doesn't already know. The Republican leadership now, because of the doddering, arrogant, out of its mind, Nancy Pelosi-led Democratic Party, the Republican establishment now is the main threat. They are the big final obstacle to be taken down. They've gone along with the fake Russian narrative. They've tried to start World War III with Russia. They've worked with CNN and other dinosaur media to sell the hoax that has led the war economy to the edge of World War III. They are the people leading our planet to the precipice for ratings, as the producer says. Think about that. Think about how these individuals think that none of this is ever going to blow back on them. They're so arrogant, they openly brag to people about how they're lying and deceiving the public, not thinking that, hey, you might not want to talk about this type of criminal activity in front of people if you're actually doing it. But again, that's what makes them so dangerous. And so now let's look at the Republican establishment. Nikki Haley is way in over her head. She comes off like a inward-looking nincompoop who is on some type of weird existential power trip. And again, it's this image, just like with Obama, of women who've never been in the military and never killed anybody or never even probably been in a fist fight, throwing their weight around. It's just an archetypal image that just speaks of destruction, speaks of failed enterprises, speaks of destruction of civilization. And you've got her sending out this twisted tweet yesterday that we'll put up on screen, where she tells the Russians if anything else happens in Syria, it's going to be blamed on the Syrian government, Assad, Russia, and or Iran. That completely signals, just as the British ambassador to Syria said on the BBC a few months ago, to the rebels that are about to collapse, the ISIS and Al-Qaeda forces that our military's done a great job crushing now that Trump let them off the leash. It sends a signal to them, now is the time to stage another chemical attack. They got caught 4 years ago doing it. They got caught 3 years ago doing it. They got caught a year ago doing it. Even our own government, even our own military, even the UN has come out and said it's clearly the rebels launching this to be able to bring the United States in. And now, the only way Trump can basically destroy himself and us is letting the globalists manipulate him through their final backup plan, which is always war. And you have Nikki Haley, who meets with Ivanka Trump and meets with Pence yesterday, and then puts out this tweet saying, if anything happens, it's your fault and we're going to hit you. And this is after we've seen Russian aircraft flown by Syrians shot down. We've seen armored columns bombed. We've seen the airbase hit. That's 3 strikes that the Russians have put up with. Now they're saying, you fly into the airspace, we're going to shoot you down. So now we're in a game of brinksmanship with Russia that could trigger a larger war at any time. And you've got the neocons and the John McCains of the world in there cheerleading and pushing for Trump to launch a wider war. And that's the way the globalists always try to get us back under their control, into their system. So now is the time for everybody to be calling the White House, everybody to be tweeting at the president, everybody to be sending out Infowars.com articles, everybody to be sending this audio and this video out to the president, because he does listen to the people. And back about 2 months ago, when they tried to launch that last big war, Trump came out and said, look, we're not going to have boots on the ground. We're not removing Assad. But his own advisors, like McMaster and others, were on the news saying that they were going to remove Assad and the ISIS and Al-Qaeda rebels. So again, Trump is one man trying to manage this giant system, and he needs our support, and he needs us to keep them honest, as Stephen Bannon has said, so that we raise the alarms as watchmen and women and modern Paul Revere's on the wall. So again, there's an article out by Cy Hirsch today. It's up on Infowars.com, where he points out that how Trump got manipulated across that red line with the chemical weapons a few months ago. And clearly that was strategic, to look strong, to get the neocons off his back. The Russians understood what that was. But now there have been other aircraft shot down. There have been armored columns blown up that are battling ISIS. And clearly there are internal groups in our military, it's infiltrated like everything else, that are trying to start a wider war right now that's with Russia, the very last country we want to get in a fight with, ladies and gentlemen. They're not involved in our internal politics. That's been proven. I mean, everybody's involved some, but nothing compared to China. And they're not the enemy. They're a Christian nation that's rebuilding. They've got massive resources. We should be in business with Russia, not having continual conflict with them, because a bunch of neocons and a bunch of neo-libs want to play with the whole planet like it's a grand chessboard. It's emblematic that as the tide of globalism goes out, you see David Rockefeller dying this year. You see Zbigniew Brzezinski. I think you're going to see other top globalists die this year, because it's all emblematic of the great turning and the great change that is taking place right now. But understand this, she 100% signaled another demon in a red dress to the world as the U.S. ambassador to the UN. She signaled, just like Samantha Powers and others did a few years ago, the exact same neocon policy, but said even stronger language, anything happens, it's your fault. That is belligerent. That is out of control. Syria is a sovereign nation. Russia was invited in there. Our own military came to its senses 5 years ago and told Obama we're not going to back Al-Qaeda going into Syria in the civil war. We're not going to be their air force. So then the media changed the name to ISIS to confuse the public, but it didn't. The public now understands it's the same people. Colonel Schaefer's exposed this on the broadcast. He's briefed Congress in secret on these issues. And we broke all of this 4+ years ago before anybody else had it. And I'm only pointing out that's why they call us fake news, is they are so angry. The criminal elements of the CIA and others, and the Ford Foundation, and the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Board of Governors of the FCC have all openly said they hate us because we're putting out narratives that are true. Remember that big Google contract a few months ago that they admitted was real? Millions of dollars for subcontractor companies to go in and delist InfoWars as real news and say it's fake and vote it down. They didn't change their algorithm. They artificially go out into the public to manipulate it from without, because if they manipulate the algorithm, it blinds Google. So they didn't do that out of goodness. They did that out of keeping their algorithm real, but they went and artificially manipulated the algorithm from the outside. They don't tinker with the central algorithm. They just manipulate the algorithm from the outside. And it's said in there, remember? It's said in there that, look, he changed, the course of the whole Syria thing. He had Ron Paul on, and he had these other people on, and they're not credible to speak on this issue. Well, the Ron Paul was quoting the UN. That's what's crazy. It was because it was credible, and we were showing examples from 4 years ago and 2 years ago and 3 years ago when they got caught staging the chemical attacks. When the rebels got caught. So it was because of that they put out a contract to delist us. They don't put contracts out over, quote, fake news. That's what CNN is. They put out the Megyn Kelly contract on us and all these contracts out to try to discredit us and brand us as fraud because they know we're real, and we're building an effective opposition to the globalists that's based on moral, free market, Christian, open society values. I don't mean George Soros' open society. Everything with them, again, is a counterfeit. Real open free societies for folks that want to be in open, real Renaissance free societies. Now, David Knight is coming up. He's hosting the transmission today. I'll be back tomorrow live in studio. But big things are happening, ladies and gentlemen. You've got the O'Keefe situation, that video coming up of the CNN committing suicide, basically, and so much more. But just keep your eye on the prize. Keep reaching out to these brainwashed liberals. They mean well. Their whole identity has basically been put into a lie. All of us have got to work harder and harder at not laughing at them and not being as mean to them, even though it's hard not to do when they're calling for our deaths, because you have to understand these are cult victims that have to be somehow deprogrammed. This is serious business. They've been under serious hardcore mind control to now where they see the same haircut that Beckham has, the soccer player, on Eric Trump, they flip out. I mean, this is devastating mind control, where they can't even see an American flag without crapping themselves. And then the government and the media are there catering to it, feeding into the mental illness, trying to normalize this. This is all done by design, globally. Back to David Knight, Infowars.com, folks. Please support us. Please support the broadcast. We have free shipping that ends on July 4th. We have specials on Super Male Vitality and on X2. And on so many other great products, they're going to have to end probably before the 4th of July sale does, because we're running low on some of those, like Super Male, like X2. But it is your purchase of the high-quality toothpaste. It is your purchase of the organic shampoo, Emmerich's Essentials. It is your purchase of the sunscreen that's 40% off right now with the other products that makes it all possible. And that's how we're doing this. We need to get bigger and stronger in the face of the globalists so we can really take it to the next level. We've proven we're delivering victory thanks to your support. We're in this together. So again, ladies and gentlemen, Infowars.com, InfoWarsStore.com to support us. And whatever you do, spread the link to Infowars.com/show. Back to David Knight.
All right, and that was Alex Jones breaking this down. I'm David Knight here in the studio on this Tuesday, June 27th, 2017. Alex is breaking down how very important what is happening in Syria is right now. We have to understand that the Trump White House is divided. We have McMaster, who came in and replaced Flynn. And we have an interesting article, again, from Circa. They're the people who went in and took a look at the FISA court, pointing out that the FBI had violated the law in terms of coming after individuals, unmasking them, using the NSA for these purposes. Now it goes a little bit deeper. We find out that the FBI has retaliated, apparently, against Michael Flynn. He had taken the side of somebody who had a sexual discrimination lawsuit against then number 2 FBI Director Andrew McCabe, who is now acting FBI Director. And it was 2 years after that they came after Michael Flynn. Now, what happened with that? As Michael Flynn left and he was replaced by McMaster's, somebody who had worked closely with Petraeus, somebody who was committed to regime change, just like Nikki Haley. That's when we had the attack, and supposedly in response to a sarin gas attack. And, of course, the Seymour Hersh article exposes how that is false. We're going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at what Nikki Haley is doing. We're also going to take a look, of course, at CNN. This implosion that we're seeing here at CNN. It was a couple of weeks ago that we had the Megyn Kelly thing. We saw the duplicity, the lies, the targeted destruction of the mainstream media targeted at Alex Jones, and he exposed that with what he recorded in terms of the pre-interview discussions that they had. Now we have video that has surfaced from Project Veritas, from James O'Keefe, showing people inside CNN talking about how this is absolute BS. That was his words. He spelled it out for you. I'm not going to do it on air. Pointing out how it is absolute BS. He said there's no evidence here of any of this. Something that we all know, but they're doing it for business purposes. Talking about how Zucker is saying, okay, great, you guys reported on this climate change stuff, but let's get back to Russia. That's where the money is. A very cynical effort to manipulate information. And a key part of this, I think, when I was starting to look at this today, as I surveyed the mainstream news sources, I found it very interesting. There was absolutely nothing about CNN's fake Russian news narrative or retractions or firings or the stonewalling even within CNN. You have reporter Brian Stelter who says, what's going on? And he gets shut down. And, of course, they came back and said, we're not going to have any more stories about Russia until it gets approved at the vice presidential level. And then we had these firings that happened today. But there was absolutely nothing about it on Reuters, nothing about it on The Guardian, nothing about it on the Wall Street Journal, nothing about it, of course, on CNN, except they had a feature where Don Lemon was scolding the media for not standing up to the White House. Washington Post, nothing at all about it. They simply complained and whined about the fact that they didn't have cameras at the White House press briefing. We're going to talk about that as well. The self-absorbed, posturing media, represented by Jim Acosta at the White House press conference. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
This July 4th, we're having some of the biggest sales ever. Our incredible nootropic Brain Force Plus, 30% off, and now with 20% more in each bottle. Super Mel Vitality, sold out for months. Concentrated herbs that have absolutely changed my life and so many others, 30% off as well. So again, I want to thank you all for your support. I want to thank you for your prayers. You have changed the world, and I want to encourage you to continue to change the world and to accelerate your resistance.
The struggle in the DNC fraud lawsuit continues. You've had the current counsel for the plaintiffs request that the judge provide witness protection. That notion was rejected despite 3 mysterious deaths of potential witnesses in the case: Seth Rich, Sean Lucas, and Barrington Wisenant Jr. There are also stalwarts in the justice system that are trying to have this case dropped entirely, despite the obvious glaring issues that the DNC has had over the course of the last 2 years. While the lawsuit represents Bernie Sanders supporters who feel they have been wronged by the DNC, Bernie Sanders has fallen silent on the issue. Donald Trump tweeted out this weekend, Hillary Clinton colluded with the Democrat Party in order to beat crazy Bernie Sanders. Is she allowed to collude? Unfair to Bernie. So now Donald Trump has done more to raise awareness for the DNC fraud lawsuit than Bernie Sanders has, who actually is the one that had the election stolen from him. Why is Bernie Sanders silent on the issue? Maybe I guess he's busy with being investigated by the FBI for bank fraud. For Infowars.com, this is Owen Schroyer.
It's more critical than ever to recommit to financially support the broadcast and to get great products back in exchange. A 360 win. Emmerich's Essentials Outdoor Special. We're talking our non-nano zinc, high-powered sunscreen, along with Emmerich's Essentials bug spray that's totally organic and natural and works way better than chemical brands I've personally used. Help fund this organization that you know has been successful fighting tyranny on every front. We have private labeled it, and it is the exact same product, just the name is different. Emmerich's Essentials. It's on average 20% off. On top of that, if you sign up for auto ship, you get an additional 25% off. Emmerich's Essentials is all about personal care, hygiene, not getting skin cancer, not getting bit by a bunch of bugs and mosquitoes. It's all there. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, and you'll find Emmerich's Essentials. You've got to have the will to accept the truth and buck the system and the group collective. Do that, and you'll earn your way to the next level. This is the InfoWar.
News, analysis, reports. It's the Alex Jones Show. And now, your host, David Knight.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We have a very busy show today. Even before this news from Project Veritas about CNN, the internal admission that they caught on tape, that they know that this is false. They don't believe any of this stuff. They're simply doing it because they think it's good business for them. They're feeding people what they want to hear, their confirmation bias, and they're willing to lie to you about that. And of course, this is nothing new, but it is new to hear them say it on camera. And this is all part of the implosion that began at the end of last week. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's going on in Syria, very serious there. We also have articles about Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He had a trial that began yesterday. They're trying to essentially bring criminal charges against him for obeying the immigration law. We had Obama say, we're not going to enforce immigration law. We're not going to allow the Border Patrol to enforce immigration law. You better not do that. Sheriff Joe was detaining people and turning them over to federal agents. Now, this is part of a program called Secure Communities. This is something, by the way, I went to a meeting here in Austin where the Democrats were furious at the black sheriff that was there. They were all over him saying, how dare you turn over criminals to immigration control? And of course, he was voted out of office, and they put in this lady who said, I'm not going to turn anybody over except for 3 crimes. And then one of those crimes was not sexual assault or sexual crimes. And she goes, okay, 4 crimes. 4 crimes is like Monty Python's Spanish Inquisition. We're going to go for 3. No, make that 4. No, make that 5. As people started pointing out, but you're letting violent criminals go and not turning them over. But that's what Sheriff Joe Arpaio was doing. And a judge then, in addition to the president saying we're not going to enforce immigration laws, we had a judge say, you better not enforce immigration laws. They continued to do that, and now they're coming after him for criminal charges. And it's very interesting because the Justice Department, under Attorney General Loretta Lynch, and we heard all of this stuff from James Comey saying, well, let's just call this a matter because we don't want to interfere with an election. And James Comey said, I did the things that I did because I didn't want to interfere with an election. But they went after Sheriff Joe Arpaio, because they wanted to interfere with the election. And they did it in a way to interfere with the election. But they're not content with that. They want to put this 85-year-old man in jail. And he is asking for Jeff Sessions to testify. He's asking for them to do things. And quite frankly, Jeff Sessions ought to just shut down this investigation. If he had any integrity, he would do that. He should do that. This is an outrage that the Justice Department would continue on with this show trial, taking somebody who was in law enforcement and trying to put them in jail because they enforced the law that the president and a judge said, we're not going to enforce the law. We're going to act as tyrants. The law is in my mouth. I'm going to shut this down. Anybody that tries to enforce this law, we're going to come after you. We also have coming up in the second hour, we have John Kiriakou. He is a CIA whistleblower on torture. He was the one who exposed what was going on there. He actually went to jail for that. He has a book called The Convenient Terrorist. And quite frankly, it dovetails quite well with what we're seeing in terms of this false narrative coming out of Syria, where there are elements within the Trump administration pushing for war. Nikki Haley, McMaster. There are other people like Mattis who wants to fight ISIS. He says, we're not there for regime change. We want to fight ISIS. But there is, within the National Security Council, under McMaster, they are pushing very hard for everything that they can in order to create a very, very dangerous war. And we need to, as Trump supporters, stand with Donald Trump and remind him, because there is this division in his White House, just as there was a division with the Paris Climate Treaty. There were those who said we need to stay in this. There were those who said we need to get out of it. And fortunately, the people who were saying we need to get out of it, they eventually won. We need to stand with and behind Donald Trump to make sure that he does what is right, what he campaigned for. And that is not to get involved in regime change, to create more chaos in the Middle East, and to bring us to the brink of war with Russia. Very, very incredibly dangerous and irresponsible what Nikki Haley is doing, as well as McMaster. Before I get back to the news, and before we play these clips from CNN and the Project Veritas, I just want to remind you that we have our 4th of July mega specials are now live at InfoWarsStore.com. This is how we fund our operation, folks. We don't get money from J.P. Morgan. They were the ones who said, hey, you're going to have an interview with Alex Jones. We're going to pull our sponsorship. Can you imagine if we ever tried to get Big Pharma or the big banks to sponsor anything that we ever did? No, you standing with us, standing behind us, buying these products is what allows us to be an independent media. We're independent of other outside financial sources, and certainly we're not getting the sponsorship of big banks, big pharma, big chemical companies. Interestingly enough, and I don't know if we'll have time to get to this today, but now we've had more movements against Monsanto. They're not going to support us. They're going to do everything they can to try to silence us. But we have this special. We have now put it live. It is free shipping through the 4th of July weekend, as well as massive discounts on a wide variety of products. We have Brain Force Plus, now 30% off. Super Male Vitality, 30% off. Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine, 30% off. We have Z-Shield, 30% off. And InfoWars Select Storable Food, 30 to 40% off retail. Very important. When you look at natural disasters, when you look at man-made disasters, and even if you look at the volatility of our infrastructure, our food supply, things that can cause a massive spike or shortage, make sure that you have that cushion for your family, for yourself, that is storable. It is high quality, made in the USA, non-GMO. You always then have that backup, that cushion against spikes that are going to hit the food supply. Also, Emmerich's Essentials Outdoor Packs, 40% off retail, and Living Defense, 20% off. While supplies last, again, free shipping as part of the 4th of July Summer Mega Special at InfoWarsStore.com. All right, now we've had more fallout today from the stories that began breaking last week, the false news story, the latest Russian nonsense that was coming out of these people. It was the Russian investment fund with ties to Trump officials. That was a CNN story. It cited a single anonymous source. A single anonymous source. Where have we seen that before? We've seen that before all the time from the Washington Post. All the time from the Washington Post. So it's not really any different from the Washington Post, or maybe we should call it the Amazon Post. And of course, that's what Donald Trump said. He says, well, what about all these other phony stories that they do? And Donald Trump Jr. called this story the biggest fake news scandal in the network's history. He said that Donald Trump said CNN is looking at big management changes. Now they got caught falsely pushing their Russian stories. Absolutely. And he later on tweeted out, so they caught CNN cold, but what about NBC, CBS, ABC? What about the failing New York Times, the Washington Post? They're all fake news. Exactly. They're running with anonymous sources. It's not anonymous sources who are telling us, it's the FISA court who's telling us that the FBI violated the law, that the NSA violated the law, that they engaged in political activity to benefit the Obama administration, benefit Hillary Clinton. We know that. That is the big story, folks, that is coming. But meanwhile, let's take a look at these 3 journalists who are now leaving. We reported yesterday that within CNN, Brian Stelter did not get any information. They were stonewalling him even within his own organization. We've had Sean Hannity come out and say that CNN's Jeff Zucker needs to be fired. He said it's very fake news. We've had Paul Joseph Watson say Trump must now revoke CNN's White House press credentials. Tucker Carlson says CNN is no longer a news organization. Absolutely true. Let's play this clip from Project Veritas, because now, in addition to all of this implosion of this story and the aftermath of that's happened in the last several days at CNN, we now have this internal exposure. A CNN producer, John Bonifield, who was caught on tape talking about the fact that they know that this is BS. Here's a clip from the Project Veritas exposure.
Then why is CNN constantly like Russia this, Russia that?
Because it's ratings.
Because it's ratings?
Our ratings are incredible right now.
But honestly, you think the whole Russia is just like bull?
Could be bullshit. I mean, it's mostly bullshit right now. Like, we don't have any big giant proof. I just feel like they don't really have it, but they want to keep digging. Mm-hmm. And so I think the president is probably right to say, like, look, you are witch hunting me. Like, you have no smoking gun. You have no real proof. And the CEO of CNN said in our internal meeting, he said, good job, everybody, covering the climate accords. But we're done with it. Let's get back to Russia.
Wow. Hear that? So it's like there's no smoking gun, there's no giant proof. It's mostly just BS right now. And he said, we had this meeting, and he said, good job. This was CEO Jeff Zucker again. Just to give you some context, he said President Trump pulled out of the climate accords, and for a day and a half, we covered the climate accords. And the CEO of CNN said in our internal meetings, he said, good job, everybody, covering the climate accord, but we're done with that. Let's just get back to Russia. Let's play the next clip on here.
So you believe like the Russia thing's a little crazy, right?
Even if Russia was trying to swing an election, we try to swing their elections. We're in our CIA and doing all the time. Like, we're out there trying to manipulate governments. Like, you win because you know the game and you play it right. She didn't play it right.
Then why is CNN constantly like Russia this, Russia that?
Because it's ratings.
Because it's ratings?
Our ratings are incredible right now.
In the month of May, CNN's ratings were significantly higher than they were the year before. The Russia story and Trump have made CNN millions.
Because of,
So, my boss, I shouldn't say this, my boss a couple days yesterday, we were having a discussion about this dental shoot, and he's like, I just want you to know what we're up against here. And he goes, just to give you some context, President Trump pulled out of the climate accords, and for a day and a half we covered the climate accords, and the CEO of CNN said in our internal meeting, he said, good job everybody covering the climate accords, but we're done with it, let's get back to Russia.
the CEO?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So even the climate accords, he was like, okay, a day or so, but we're moving back to Russia.
Isn't that amazing? You know, I had an interview last night with a man who wrote a book called The Plot to Scapegoat Russia. And it was done from the perspective of like an Oliver Stone liberal. As a matter of fact, this guy's basically on the same page as Oliver Stone. Not a conservative, but they understand. They understand what's going on with this phony narrative. And we also have Glenn Greenwald with The Intercept pointing out how they have jumped the shark so many times, completely lost their credibility. But the man that I was talking to about the plot to scapegoat Russia is not a warmonger. He's not somebody who's pushing for war. But we have to understand the cynical nature of this, and it's about business. And you're going to hear this in the next clip. But it is also a very politicized operation. This is not a news organization, as I think it was Sean Hannity said. It's a campaign. This is a politicized attack. It is Operation Mockingbird, and it is also not just, as I point out many times, it's not just an offensive attack against Donald Trump, trying to stall his administration, trying to entrap him in process crimes. But they are also trying to come up with plausible deniability when it comes out that they are the ones who have been hacking into state boards of election. It was Jay Johnson at Department of Homeland Security that has been stonewalling congressmen who have asked him about the actions of Homeland Security violating the law, breaking into state boards of election, and saying, well, we need to show that this is critical infrastructure, trying to create essentially a panic situation so they can insert themselves into local elections. But they are violating the law. The FBI, the NSA violated the law. This is not an anonymous whistleblower. This is the FISA court, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It was created in the wake of the Church and the Pike hearings from the 1970s, because at that time, guess what? The CIA and the NSA were listening to Americans illegally. That was not a part of what they were created to do. They tried to rein them in with the FISA court, and then they began using the FISA Act as a means to do a dragnet surveillance of Mr. or Mrs. Verizon. And so the court is very upset that these intelligence agencies have been basically operating as political operatives. We have Chuck Grassley, senator from Iowa, saying the same thing, trying to get ahead, but they're getting stonewalled at all these different operations. That is the true story here, folks. That is the real key, how they were used defensively. Yes, they're trying to use this as a defensive mechanism. They're trying to muddy the water. They're trying to help the Democrats, but it goes beyond just trying to help the Democrats after the election. They were helping the Democrats before the election. They were using the intelligence and law enforcement communities in an illegal way, and they're very intent on covering that up. And so is CNN. But then, of course, here's the obvious part, folks. It's about the money as well. Here's what he has to say in the next clip.
So it's, I mean, I understand it's all ratings, right?
Oh, it's a business. So it's a business. People are like, the media has like an ethical... But all the nice, cutesy little ethics that used to get talked about in journalism school, you're just like, that's adorable. That's adorable. Yeah, this is a business, especially cable news. You know, cable news isn't the New York Times, and it's not even like NBC News. I mean, NBC News still gets 20 million viewers a night. Cable news is getting 1 million. So, like they gotta do what they gotta do to make their money, I think. And so I love the news business, but I find it so fascinating. I'm very cynical about it. At the same time, so are most of my colleagues. So, yeah, it's like I'm not alone.
So he loves the news business, and it's strictly about business. It's strictly about eyeballs, and they will tell anybody anything in order to get eyeballs. That's what he's saying. And that's true. That's what we just saw with Megyn Kelly. And it's no different if you're at NBC than it is if you're at CNN or if you're at Fox or whatever. They will come after people, tell lies about them, edit this, and that's the key thing. You have to understand. Sean Hannity came out and said, show the entire tape. We've got to stop with this character assassination, with this editing of the interviews to get precisely what you want to do, hours upon hours of interviews, and then you can distill it down to say precisely what you want. That is the attack journalism, the Operation Mockingbird, the control that has been exercised by the mainstream media, and by that I mean NBC, ABC, CBS. They were the part of Operation Mockingbird, working with the government, working with the CIA, putting out the narratives, the stories that the government wanted. And anybody who questioned that was shut down as a conspiracy theorist, beginning with the JFK assassination. That's when they coined that term. They didn't want anybody looking at the independent media. It's amazing how, when you go back and think about that, there was one person with a film recorder that got some independent video, and look at the trouble that caused the government with their pat story of about a patsy with a bolt-action rifle taking those 3 shots from one location behind. That created a great deal of problem for them. They have been fighting that for 60 years now, and they just can't get past that. Today, we have everybody with cameras. They can't win. We can talk to each other. We can transcend them. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more analysis, and we'll be talking about Sheriff Joe and Syria, what's happening there. And, of course, John Kiriakou coming up in the next hour, CIA whistleblower.
Vitamin Mineral Fusion. Visit InfoWarsLife.com to secure your canister. We have worked for years with our chemists and scientists to create the most powerful and affordable, great-tasting multivitamin formula available. Vitamin Mineral Fusion Drink Mix at InfoWarsLife.com is loaded with a full month's supply of essential vitamins, minerals, and amino acids that your body absolutely needs. In the history of InfoWars Life, we've brought out a lot of amazing products like Survival Shield X2, Super Male Vitality, and so many others. With its unique delivery system and proprietary manufacturing process designed for maximized effects, this formula is the platinum standard of multivitamin mineral products. And this part is most important. The ingredients in Vitamin Mineral Fusion are either plant-derived or of the highest quality lab standard. That means it's clean. That means it's pure. And rest assured, you're fighting the tip of the spear in the info war. That's InfoWarsLife.com and Vitamin Mineral Fusion. Take action now before we sell out.
Wow, you're going to love the latest idea out of the EU. Ska Keller, a German member of the European Parliament and of the Green Party, said we should transplant entire villages from Syria to Germany, and that would encourage more migrants to enter Germany. Listen to these quotes. The idea of Syrian villages is only one possibility we can use. For example, if refugees don't want to go to a country alone that has no other refugees, people would rather go where compatriots already live, which makes integration and acceptance easier. Let's look at these 3 compatriots. From Paul Joseph Watson, Sweden, migrants viciously beat disabled man while calling him racist. 3 compatriot refugees attempted to steal a homeless man's wallet in a train station during an incident which took place last month. The handicapped man was kicked and punched and received a vicious uppercut as one of the migrants lectured him about war on Muslims and how all Swedes were racist. Now how's that for acceptance? You can read both articles now on Infowars.com. Rob J. reporting for Infowars.com and Infowars Nightly News.
Super Blue fluoride-free toothpaste, a revolutionary new toothpaste designed to deliver a powerful clean while supporting good oral health and fresh breath. Unlike other leading brands, this groundbreaking toothpaste features natural oils and ingredients to supercharge your smile with an array of beneficial compounds hand-selected for your oral health benefits. Notice the difference with Super Blue fluoride-free toothpaste. Refresh your breath with a glistening clean smile. Have crisp, beaming, spotless teeth. Don't be afraid to show them off. Let Super Blue radiate purity and freshness through your new expression of happiness. Try Super Blue fluoride-free toothpaste today. You won't be disappointed. Only available at InfoWarsStore.com.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight on this Tuesday, June 27th, 2017. I want to get back to this last clip from the Project Veritas video. I think it's very amazing what he has to say about the witch hunt. Before we do, real quickly, I want to remind you that we have the 4th of July summer mega specials are now live at InfoWarsStore.com. That is free shipping, store-wide. Everything in the entire store, free shipping. Plus 30% off items like Brain Force Plus, Super Male Vitality, Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine, Z-Shield. And we have 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food, 40% off Emmerich's Essentials. That's our outdoor pack. So this is all while supplies last. It's going to go very quickly. Everything free shipping at the store and sales from 30 to 40% off selected items. So take a look at what's there. We really appreciate your support. It's what keeps us independent. And it's what allows us to tell the stories as we see them. And that's the key thing. You know, we had Zucker come out and say, you know, people still trust CNN. You should never trust a news source just because they say it. You know, you can have an experience with people and say, yeah, okay, I verified that. That was real. I verified that again. That's real. And then you start to begin to trust an organization, but you should always verify every story. Anybody can make a mistake. They can make an honest mistake, or they can make dishonest reports, as we see here with CNN. Let's play this last clip here, what this guy has to say about President Trump being witch hunted.
I think that there are a lot of liberal CNN viewers who want to see Trump really get scrutinized, and I think if we would have behaved that way with President Obama and scrutinized everything that he was doing with as much scrutiny as we applied to Donald Trump, I think our viewers would have been turned off. I think they would have thought we were attacking him. But I think our viewers right now, and I'm not saying all of our viewers are super liberals. Right. I think there's just a lot of them. And
so Trump's good for business, you're saying?
Trump is good for business right now.
But honestly, you think the whole Russia is just bull?
Could be bull. I mean, it's mostly right now. We don't have any big giant proof. But then they say, well, there's still an investigation going on. And you're like, yeah. I don't know. If you were finding something, we'd know about it. The way these leaks happen, they leak it. It leak. If there was something really good, it would leak.
Yeah. It would have leaked before voting, I would say. If anything was good out there, it would have came out already.
Yeah, the leaks keep leaking, and there's so many great leaks, and it's amazing. And I just refuse to believe that if they had something really good like that, that wouldn't leak, because we've been getting all these other leaks. So I just feel like they don't really have it, but they want to keep digging. Mm-hmm. And so I think the president is probably right to say, look, you are witch hunting me. You have no smoking gun. You have no real proof.
Exactly. And we've been saying that for a very long time. Here's this guy who's a CNN producer telling that to a hidden camera for Project Veritas, James O'Keefe releasing that information. We've had Oliver Stone say that. We had the guy that I interviewed yesterday, the plot to scapegoat Russia, saying that. We've been saying that. We've said there's absolutely nothing here. If there was anything, they would have found it by now, but there isn't. And it's a very dangerous thing to continue to go down this road. They're provoking war as assuredly as people like Nikki Haley and McMaster are trying to provoke a world war. And we have people like Glenn Greenwald as well, talking about the absurdity of this Russian narrative. He wrote an article, came out today, CNN journalists resign. The latest example of media recklessness in the Russia threat. And he says they're not alone. He says, quite frankly, Washington Post, and you heard this guy say, well, you know, we're just CNN. There's the big guys like the Washington Post and New York Times. Yeah, they've been caught doing this as well. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to read you one of the examples from this article from The Intercept, talking about the Washington Post, the relentless pushing of false information even after it's exposed as being false. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Protect your skin with SPF 30 sunscreen lotion by Emmerich Essentials. Perfect for face and body, this natural unscented sunscreen can be worn at all times of the day whenever you need sun protection. We source ingredients from nature, producing a product free of harmful chemicals and toxins. This natural lotion contains 21% zinc oxide, which is the largest particle size used, and we do not use nanoparticles. The larger the particle, the safer it is for your body. The organic oils help hydrate the skin, leaving it nice and smooth. The truly natural, fragrance-free sunscreen for the most sensitive skin. Emmerich Essentials wants you to enjoy the sun and strives to bring you organic products to enhance your life. Naturally protect your skin with SPF 30 sunscreen lotion by Emmerich Essentials. Stop exposing yourself and your family to toxic ingredients. Visit InfoWarsStore.com and learn more about the new SPF 30 sunscreen lotion.
Leading a frontal assault on the lies of the New World Order, it's Alex Jones.
They took my saddle in Houston, broke my leg in Santa Fe, lost my wife and a girlfriend somewhere along the way.
In defense of human liberty, Alex Jones.
I'll be looking for aid when they pull that gate.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're going to be joined in the next segment by CIA whistleblower who subsequently went to jail for exposing criminal actions. Isn't that the way it always is? You expose criminal actions within the government, and it's the whistleblower that goes to jail. The people who committed the criminal actions do not go to jail. His name is John Kiriakou. He wrote a book with Joseph Hickman called The Convenient Terrorist, and it's another case of a convenient narrative that is being sold by the mainstream media, by the U.S. government, in order to get what they want, essentially a pack of lies. It'll be a very interesting interview. I think it's a very interesting book. I wanted to get to, in this section right here, as we're talking about the CNN story, this story here from The Intercept by Glenn Greenwald. He said several factors here are compounding CNN's embarrassment. To begin with, the story was first debunked by Breitbart and by Sputnik News. They explained that the investment fund documented several factual inaccuracies in the report. They said the fund is not even a part of the named Russian bank, Brink, which is under investigation. Breitbart cited numerous other factual inaccuracies. So this whole thing started melting down the end of the week. They pulled this thing back, and now they have pulled back from Russia. But they said CNN is hardly alone, and this is the key point, folks. It's hardly alone when it comes to embarrassing retractions regarding Russia. And then they talk about Washington Post. Remember the end of the year, how we had all of this fear-mongering about how Vladimir Putin was attempting to hack our electric grid? That's a tweet from an MSNBC journalist. We have other Democrat officials doing the same thing. And, of course, we just had this last week. Jay Johnson going before Congress and saying, I know that Vladimir Putin personally ordered the attempt hacks into our state boards of election, because Vladimir Putin wants to get those voter rolls in Georgia. No, I don't think so. I think it's far more likely that the DNC, the people who really did hack the election against Bernie Sanders, I think it's far more likely that they want to do it. I think it's far more likely that bad actors in the state bureaucracy are to be able to insinuate themselves in the electronic voting machines to truly hack the votes, to hack the totals. And they're using this. They were the ones who were caught red-handed trying to break into the Georgia state election information and into the Indiana state election. We had state secretaries of state get together and ask Donald Trump to shut down Homeland Security. They've asked Jay Johnson for information about what had happened. completely stonewalled them until he came out and had his dog and pony show and said, it was Putin who did it. It's Putin who did it. Well, what were they telling us back December 30th? They published, this is the Washington Post, published a blockbuster, frightening scoop that immediately and predictably went viral and generated massive traffic. Remember when this happened? Russian hackers, the paper claimed, based on anonymous sources. The favorite source of the Washington Post and the New York Times, anonymous sources, had hacked into the U.S. electricity grid through a Vermont utility. What was this in reality? Well, they had not bothered to even contact the Vermont utility. When somebody did, the Vermont utility said, well, we found a little bit of malware on a laptop. It was not connected to the Vermont grid. It was not connected to the U.S. electric grid. So then they come out and they double down on this. As the Washington Post, you can see the headline, National Security. Russian operation hacked a Vermont utility, showing risk to U.S. electrical grid, security officials say. And then in small letters underneath it, an editor's note. An earlier version of this story incorrectly said the Russian hackers had penetrated the U.S. electric grid. Authorities say there's no indication of that so far. So far. The computer that was hacked was not attached to the grid. This is so alarmist, so over the top, ridiculous. And yet, and he continues to go through this story, showing how this story evolved and how they continued to try to reluctantly, they little bit by little bit, they'd let some detail go, and then they would do another story and let another detail go that they had pushed forward falsely, but still maintaining this fear, this false narrative that by this time they well knew was not true. This is the Washington Post. This is Jeff Bezos' political weapon that he bought for a pittance. I mean, $250 million to Jeff Bezos? That's less than a little stock blip on a particular day. And that makes him a player in Washington. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to talk to John Kiriakou, CIA.
Wow, you're going to love the latest idea out of the EU. Ska Keller, a German member of the European Parliament and of the Green Party, said we should transplant entire villages from Syria to Germany, and that would encourage more migrants to enter Germany. Listen to these quotes. The idea of Syrian villages is only one possibility we can use. For example, if refugees don't want to go to a country alone that has no other refugees, people would rather go where compatriots already live, which makes integration and acceptance easier. Let's look at these three compatriots. From Paul Joseph Watson, Sweden, migrants viciously beat disabled man while calling him racist. 3 compatriot refugees attempted to steal a homeless man's wallet in a train station during an incident which took place last month. The handicapped man was kicked and punched and received a vicious uppercut as one of the migrants lectured him about war on Muslims and how all Swedes were racist. Now how's that for acceptance? You can read both articles now on Infowars.com. Rob J. reporting for Infowars.com and Infowars Nightly News.
It's Paul Joseph Watson, and the t-shirt has finally arrived. Nothing triggers safe space snowflakes more than this slogan and my face. It is the new t-shirt from InfoWarsStore.com. Conservatism is the new counterculture. You've seen how much this triggers the safe space snowflakes. The left controls culture. They control arts. They control entertainment. They have the complete monopoly on culture, which is why conservatism is the new counterculture. We are striking back in the culture war. This triggers snowflakes like nothing you've ever seen in your life. You've seen how much they absolutely hate the image of my face and that particular slogan, conservatism is the new counterculture. This t-shirt is not only a conversation starter, it will trigger the holy hell out of leftists. It will make me incredibly happy. It's available right now. Get yours at InfoWarsStore.com.
Dr. Group, you developed Living Defense for us. It took you over a year to do it. Why is this so good?
Because people are actually waking up to the problem that pretty much scares me the most. I mean, I try to make sure that I don't put toxins from food and water and beverages in my system, but right now we're dealing with massive parasites, which is anything that's harmful to your body that lives off a host mechanism. Right now with all the refugees, spreading disease around. We have biological warfare going on everywhere. These are all parasites.
Tell us about all the stuff that said that there's so many things that are in it.
You have the neem in there. You have the organic clove bud, the organic wormwood. I recommend doing a parasite cleanse at least twice a year.
All right, well, I'm glad we've got some back in because I'm going back on it today. It just came back in yesterday. Living Defense, InfoWarsLife.com. And folks, you can't lose. It's full of stuff that's great for your body, period. And you support the broadcast, InfoWarsLive.com. Thank you, Dr. Group from the Global Healing Center. Thank you so much for all your work, sir, on this great product.
Rallying patriots worldwide in defense of human liberty. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show on this Tuesday, June 27th, 2017. I'm David Knight, your host. I misspoke in the last segment. I said that our guest coming up would be in this segment. It's going to be an hour from now that we're going to have John Kiriakou, former CIA whistleblower, talking to us about his newest book, Convenient Terrorist. It's always very important for us to come back and look at the official stories that we get from the government, to fact check those stories, to sanity check those stories. That's why people push back against the JFK assassination. And that's why the FBI, in order to shut that down, invented the term conspiracy theorist. You don't believe that one guy with a bolt-action rifle and they took all those shots from the back? You believe some of those witnesses? You believe the Zapruder film? What's the matter with you people? You're a bunch of paranoid, tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists if you don't believe the government's official story. Well, let's take a look at the government's official story about this Syrian chemical attack, the latest one. I was just saying before this information came out, I was saying to my wife, one of the things that Megyn Kelly asked me, what are the stories that you feel the best about that you've done here at InfoWars? And I said, well, the Bundy Ranch, I think that was a very important time to see people standing with their neighbors, standing up peacefully and saying, we're not going to take this anymore. We're not going to let you take away our property rights. We're not going to let you abuse us illegally without any legal law enforcement authority under color of law. And they did that peacefully. And they stood up and said, we're just not going to take that anymore. Because, if you don't have any property rights, you are the property. You're a slave. It's just that simple. But I also told my wife, I said, I'm very proud of the fact that we stood up in 2013 when Obama was trying to push us into a troops on the ground and becoming al-Qaeda's air force in Syria. And we stood up and said, I'm sorry, we're not buying this sarin gas attack narrative. It was phony. And first, Russia came out and pushed back against it along with Syria. Then we had UN arms weapons inspectors push back against it. And eventually, we had people within the American defense establishment come out and say, no, that didn't happen. And the whole thing got shut down. This time around, it went very quickly. And I think the reason for that is because of McMaster and the timing of when he joined the administration. But we're in a very dangerous situation. Where are we right now? Today, we've got NBC reporting, and we got tweets that are coming out from Nikki Haley. NBC reports White House warns Syria against chemical attack preparations. Don't you even think about it. Anything goes wrong there, we're going to take that as an excuse to attack Russia, to attack Syria. The United States has spotted, quote, potential preparations for another chemical weapons attack, unquote, by the Syrian government, said the White House late Monday in a statement that took some defense and military officials by surprise. Yes, the statement warned that Syria would pay a heavy price if such an attack proceeds. It gave no details of the purported preparations. Of course not. Of course there's not going to be any details. There weren't any details that could be analyzed or debunked when they launched the attack. Those details eventually did surface, and we did talk about that, and we did have former weapons inspectors debunk that at the time. But by then, it was too late. And hopefully, we're not going to see this happen again. We have to understand how incredibly dangerous these actions that are being taken by the U.S. military right now in Syria are. We are not there, folks, to fight ISIS. We have been arming ISIS. We've been training ISIS. We've been assisting ISIS. And every time ISIS is about to lose to the Syrian government, we create some kind of a false flag attack to give us an excuse to go further in. Before we shot down the Syrian jet without warning, and again, as a means to stop a knee-jerk beginning to a war, communications were established between the Russian and the United States to prevent this, to say that, talk about where the jets were and what planned actions were going to happen. That was completely ignored. We took a very dangerous, precipitous action in terms of shooting down that Syrian jet. Prior to that, on that Sunday, that was about 10 days ago. Prior to that, the preceding Thursday, we had moved artillery very close to positions that the Syrian government had. We are defending so-called moderate rebels, and we see how this works. These people are constantly changing their names. 1 week they're moderate rebels, the next week they're Al-Qaeda, they're ISIS, whatever. They just, we know exactly what's happening. We have pointed this out again with John McCain time and time again, how he goes in these areas. This is simply about creating chaos. And it's a very, very dangerous game of war that they're playing with Russians. Russians were invited by the Syrian government, which is not perfect. See, that's the issue here. There's not any perfect country in that area of the world. There's not necessarily a good guy. But we have there is a stable government. We have a government that is far less dangerous to the people in Syria and to the rest of the world than ISIS is and will be. And we have seen this played out before in Syria and in Libya. We know exactly how this is going to go down. And many people have pointed that out. But let's take a look at now what Nikki Haley is trying to do and the White House, elements within the White House. They gave no details of these supposed preparations, but they said the activities are similar to preparations the regime made before its April 4th, 2017 chemical weapons attack. So, really, what were they doing? Stealing incubators or something? And we'll talk about that. We'll look at Seymour Hersh when he talks about what kind of activities, what kind of preparations, what kind of notifications happened before that attack that was characterized as a sarin gas attack that could only be done by Syria. Unbelievable that we would take action on this, which was the same type of attack which was exposed as a lie in 2013. The White House warned, as we previously said, the U.S. and Syria is in Syria to eliminate the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And there are people in the White House who want to see that happen. But there are also people who don't care if that happens. There are people who simply want regime change, and they will use ISIS, they will empower ISIS, they will put them in charge if they can get regime change. And they have their own reasons for why they want to do that. Pipelines and other issues are involved in that. If, however, Mr. Assad conducts another mass murder attack using chemical weapons, he and his military will pay a heavy price. Nikki Haley tweeted a similar warning to Russia and Iran a short time later, saying any attack would be blamed not only on Assad, but, quote, also on Russia and Iran, who support him killing his own people. In other words, anybody we don't like, we're going to just unilaterally blame them without any proof, and we will take action. And you better believe they will. They shot down that Syrian jet without provocation, without warning. And this is the woman, basically, folks, Nikki Haley. Her family's from India. She doesn't know anything about American history, doesn't know anything about the Civil War, but she's started this one-woman pogrom to essentially erase American history that she knows nothing about. She was a never-Trump neocon. And why she was ever picked as UN ambassador, I cannot understand why she was ever put in the administration. A Syrian minister dismissed the White House statement saying that Damascus has not and will not use such arms. They don't need to. They're winning. They're winning. They don't need to do this. They don't have any motivation to do this. We are the ones who want to have a motivation to attack them, to stop them from wiping out our surrogates, ISIS. Let's keep that clear, what this is really about. Russian officials accuse the U.S. of laying the groundwork for an attack on Syrian forces. Exactly. Let's take a look at the Seymour Hersh story. Seymour Hersh pointed out, and this came out last week, it was in a German paper, last time when he was talking about the Syrian false flag attack. He had to do that in a London paper. He's a former Pulitzer Prize winner who used to work for the New York Times, but people like Seymour Hersh are no longer welcome in the United States if they do not push war. If they push against it, the New York Times, the Washington Post, whether they want to portray themselves as left or right, there's one thing they all agree on. They want war. And he pointed out the lobbing of Tomahawk missiles into Syria based on the fairy tale that Assad launched a chemical weapon attack and Trump's cozying up to the barbaric terrorist-supported leaders of Saudi Arabia have been very concerning aspects of his foreign policy. And we're all very concerned about this. And these are elements within the Trump administration. There are other elements that we need to support. And we need to support Donald Trump's instincts, his knowledge, what he campaigned on. We need to stand behind him to make sure that the right elements, that the better angels of his nature prevail here, that he's not lied to, that he's not deceived by these people, that he does the right thing. Now, this is a report that Seymour Hersh did called Trump's Red Line. He asserts that President Trump ignored important intelligence reports when he made the decision to attack Syria after pictures emerged of dying children in the war-torn country. And this is a Zero Hedge report on Seymour Hersh's report. They point out that Hersh's account, in his account, Trump was well aware of the fact that the U.S. had no solid intelligence linking the Syrian government to a chemical weapons attack. According to Hersh's article, it's doubtful that a chemical weapons attack occurred at all. Hersh said this. He said the available intelligence made clear that the Syrians had targeted a jihadist meeting on April the 4th. Remember now, this is Nikki Haley and elements within the Trump White House are saying we're seeing the same kinds of preparations happening now in Syria that happened before this chemical weapons attack. Well, what was happening on April 4th? Well, on April 4th, there was a meeting using Russian-supplied guided bombs with conventional explosives. The details of the attack, including information on its so-called high-value targets, had been provided by the Russians days in advance to American and allied military officials in Doha, whose mission is to coordinate all U.S., allied, Syrian, and Russian Air Force operations in the region. That has now been shut down because of our precipitous attack on the Syrian jet. One officer said, none of this makes any sense. We know there was no chemical attack. The Russians are furious, claiming we have real intel and we know the truth. I guess it didn't matter, they said. Russia had actually warned its American counterparts off the chance that there were any CIA assets on the ground. So basically they were playing the game right, they said. So why would this happen? Well, they believe, as Zero Hedge points out, you look at the timing of this. It's at the time that General Flynn was removed and McMaster came into the operation. So was the willingness here, the manipulations of McMaster? We're going to take a look at the efforts to...
He is the political cartoonist of this era. Hands down. There's some other great ones out there that we post on Infowars.com daily. He's got a new book that he self-published. It's amazing. It's like a coffee table book. The 2016 Presidential Election Collection. It's good for adults. It's good for children. It's good for everybody. But this is how you wake somebody up. Usually people that are leftist or globalist minions, they won't watch a film. They won't even read a long book. This is the weapon. And when I saw this a few months ago, I said, get it, carry it. Graphics.com, G-R-R, graphics.com. And I'm not just saying this. He is the top cartoonist in the world just from page views and Google searches. It's hands down. You were already probably in the top 2 or 3, but in the Trump era, you are numero uno.
And it all happened. It really turned around in 2016 because of the election. And my wife and I sat down in late 2015 and decided, you know what? I'm going to draw more cartoons. This is too important. And we're going to go all out this year. And we saw our support snowball.
I mean, when it comes to changing the world, bro, you're like The Voice. You're as big as Infowars. You're as big as Drudge now. I mean, there's not much out there as big as this. You are now one of the main guns, brother. You are one of the main things defending this country.
And there are plenty of room for more guns. I always encourage young cartoonists to join the fray. And a lot of them are afraid because they don't want to lose their job. They don't want to lose their, they don't want to get trolled. And unfortunately, that's kind of the crucible that you're going to get hammered with when you start out. However, this is just too important. And what my cartoons are, Alex, I consider them visual alarm bells. Now, you get on your show and you get angry and you rant. My cartoons are a form of a visual rant, but they're visual alarm bells. And when that alarm bell goes off and they get heard, it's going to make some people angry. Well, did you turn that damn thing off? And other people are happy. Well, you're doing a great service. So you're waking us up to what's going on. The left says there's no such thing as a conservative cartoonist because you're not funny and you're status quo. Wrong. The status quo is now the liberal deep state, the globalist deep state, the collectivist deep state. And so all these things that used to be called conspiracy theories have now been revealed to be flat out conspiracies. And what Trump has done is really, he's beaten the snakes out of their holes. So now we see them for what they are. And that in and of itself is quite a good accomplishment. More people are waking up, and your show and my cartoons, we're just trying to continue that momentum. And people are realizing, hey, we have something called a Constitution. We have to really wake up and not just go with like in my cartoon shows, these smiling lambs going brainwashed into the Great Maw of globalism. And they're using Islam as a tool to expedite that.
Clean, pure drinking water. You can't survive without it. But where do you get it? Alexa Pure Pro is a brand new, groundbreaking, gravity-fed water filtration system that is like no other. The Alexa Pure Pro transforms water from virtually any fresh source into clean, healthy drinking water, pairing the unprecedented superfiltration power of an all-new gravity block core with a hybrid chromatic shell. It removes up to 99.999% of impurities, including bacteria, viruses, fluoride, disinfectants, volatile organic contaminants, and hormones. Filter capacity up to 5,000 gallons. Stainless steel construction, easy assembly, low maintenance. Replacement filters are simple to install. And now, as part of an exclusive limited time introductory offer, you can save $20 off the retail price and get free shipping. This is a limited time offer, so order your unit today and receive free shipping and $20 off. Go to InfoWarsStore.com or call 888-253-3139.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We've been talking about this Seymour Hersh story, and this is very important that we get this right, folks. We do not want to have a war provoked in Syria. We want to shut down ISIS. And, of course, it doesn't look like the U.S. government wants to shut down their surrogate. It looks like they would rather have a war with the Russians. Let's take a look at what Seymour Hersh was saying in terms of what happened just before this latest event in Syria, as we have Nikki Haley saying that looks like they are starting to have preparations that look exactly like what happened on April 4th, 2017, before a chemical weapons attack. Was there a chemical weapons attack? What were the preparations? Well, according to Seymour Hersh, he said Russia had actually warned its American counterparts on the off chance that there were CIA assets on the ground. He continues, he said his sources told him that every operations officer in the region, in the Army, the Marine Corps, Air Force, CIA, and NSA, had to know there was something going on. The Russians gave the Syrian Air Force a guided bomb, and that was a rarity. They're skimpy with their guided bombs. They rarely share them with the Syrian Air Force. The Syrians assigned their best pilot to the mission with the best wingman. The advanced intelligence on the target, as supplied by the Russians, was given the highest possible score inside the American community. So what they were saying was they were hitting a terrorist warehouse. Now, the interesting thing about this, the one pushback against this, is the fact that the Russians gave different accounts of this incident. And honestly, we have to point this out. It said, strangely, if Hersh's reporting is accurate, it's not clear why the Russians didn't give the detailed account at the time. Why didn't the Russians emphasize that they had shared information with U.S. military in advance of the attack? It also doesn't explain why Vladimir Putin appeared to endorse two competing theories behind the events. We also had, however, reports from the Doctors Without Borders, the French organization MSF. They said that there were 8 patients that showed symptoms that were consistent to exposure to neurotoxins like sarin gas or similar things. And they said they also visited other hospitals that received victims, found the patients there smelled of bleach, suggesting that they'd been exposed to chlorine. In other words, evidence suggested there was more than one type of chemical responsible for the symptoms observed. I think this is very key. If it was sarin gas, you would not have seen the types of video that we saw with people operating without protective clothing. You also would have had nobody moving these weapons around unless they had a full hazmat suit. But the issue here, and of course we also had the former weapons inspector who had done the report, and we reported this at InfoWars as well, showing a canister that was imploded from above in the crater. If you look at the pictures that were put out by the Pentagon, you can actually see the canister, a canister that was crushed from above, did not explode from within, as you would have with a weaponized chemical canister. So it's clear that there's a lot of misinformation here, but it is also clear that the U.S., based on its actions with the Syrian jet, based on the information that we got from Postel, who is a former scientific advisor to the U.S. military's chief of naval operations, a guy who had been hired by the Pentagon as a consultant. And there's that article there showing the canister, how it was imploded from top down and not exploded. All of that information shows that this is not a chemical weapons strike. That was a fairy tale, okay? That is not the narrative that we were being told. And they point out this, and this is a Zero Hedge article. They say, missing from Hersh's account, however, is the fact that it was newly appointed National Security Advisor General H.R. McMaster who laid out the military strike proposals to the president at his resort April the 6th. That is the key, folks. That is the key. The fact that we had General Flynn removed, and now we have this article today from Circa. Did the FBI retaliate against Michael Flynn by launching the Russia probe? So there's a couple of things here that are really, really concerning about the firing of Michael Flynn. Number one, the fact that he was targeted illegally by the intelligence community, that they unveiled information about him when he was not a suspect. That is a violation of the law. The FISA court has talked about that. They have unsealed those records. The fact that they would unseal those records is a violation of a law by the FISA court, as well as the FBI. The FISA court says the FBI is never allowed to collect intelligence on American citizens in America without a search warrant. That's the Constitution. The FISA court says the Foreign Intelligence Act and the intelligence communities are allowed only to get information on foreign citizens in foreign countries without having a search warrant. What they did to General Flynn was outrageous. It was a violation of the law. It had severe consequences from not just a political standpoint, but the intelligence community. By taking out Flynn, by putting in McMaster, they were able to do this false flag attack that they did with the sarin gas. And we're going to talk about what they did with Michael Flynn when we come back.
The Empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
To celebrate this July 4th, I want to ask everybody to redouble their efforts to spread the word and to take action against tyranny. We have store-wide free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com through July 4th. Deep Earth Pure Iodine X2, now back in stock, 30% off. Z-Shield, our newest product out of the gates, 30% off because it's so amazing and I want you to try it. So for myself, the InfoWars crew, and my family, I want to wish you all a wonderful 4th of July, and I want to thank you all for your support.
The struggle in the DNC fraud lawsuit continues. You've had the current counsel for the plaintiffs request that the judge provide witness protection. That notion was rejected despite 3 mysterious deaths of potential witnesses in the case: Seth Rich, Sean Lucas, and Barrington Wisenant Jr. There are also stalwarts in the justice system that are trying to have this case dropped entirely, despite the obvious glaring issues that the DNC has had over the course of the last 2 years. While the lawsuit represents Bernie Sanders supporters who feel they have been wronged by the DNC, Bernie Sanders has fallen silent on the issue. Donald Trump tweeted out this weekend, Hillary Clinton colluded with the Democrat Party in order to beat crazy Bernie Sanders. Is she allowed to collude? Unfair to Bernie. So now Donald Trump has done more to raise awareness for the DNC fraud lawsuit than Bernie Sanders has, who actually is the one that had the election stolen from him. Why is Bernie Sanders silent on the issue? Maybe I guess he's busy with being investigated by the FBI for bank fraud. For Infowars.com, this is Owen Schroyer.
It's more critical than ever to recommit to financially support the broadcast and to get great products back in exchange. A 360 win. Emmerich's Essentials Outdoor Special. We're talking our non-nano zinc, high-powered sunscreen, along with Emmerich's Essentials bug spray that's totally organic and natural and works way better than chemical brands I've personally used. Help fund this organization that you know has been successful fighting tyranny on every front. We have private labeled it, and it is the exact same product, just the name is different. Emmerich's Essentials. It's on average 20% off. On top of that, if you sign up for auto ship, you get an additional 25% off. Emmerich's Essentials is all about personal care, hygiene, not getting skin cancer, not getting bit by a bunch of bugs and mosquitoes. It's all there. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, and you'll find Emmerich's Essentials.
Every morning before I start writing or shooting a video, I take 2 capsules of Brain Force for a sustainable burst of energy. This is, without question, the most powerful nootropic I've ever taken, and it comes without any of the crashes or the jitters associated with energy drinks. It's additive-free, nothing artificial. It's Brain Force Plus. Read thousands of 5-star independent reviews right now and get your Brain Force Plus at InfoWarsLife.com.
You found it, the tip of the spear. It is the Alex Jones Show with David Knight.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. I want to get back and finish this story about Syria, about Michael Flynn, the exposure by Seymour Hersh asking questions, and, of course, now Nikki Haley and other neocons in the Trump administration pushing the idea that there's some kind of new preparation for a new chemical weapons attack in Syria, and that's going to give them carte blanche to do whatever they wish in the area, attack whoever they wish. Whether it's Syria, Iran, or Russia, we'll just have to wait and see who Nikki Haley and McMaster point the finger at so they can start World War III. We're going to talk about where this came from, and the key part of this, I think, is the FBI retaliation against Michael Flynn, and that's precisely what this is. This is a new story. You haven't heard this before. I want to get into this, and then we're going to get back to what happened with CNN. We've also got a story update on Sheriff Joe Arpaio and the struggle that he's going through being prosecuted for obeying the law when the president and a judge told him not to. So the judge holds him in contempt of the judge's ruling, when the judge's ruling and the president's orders are in contempt of the law. So what are we supposed to obey here? We got the Nuremberg trials here, I guess, where you're not supposed to follow the written law. You're supposed to follow whatever the dictates of the president and the judge at a given time are, shutting down the immigration law, shutting down the borders. That's why the Border Patrol Union took the unprecedented move of supporting Donald Trump. They were absolutely outraged that the president and his liberal judges would shut down the enforcement of the law, shut down the protection of our borders. Real quickly, before we get back to the story, we have our 4th of July summer mega specials now live at InfoWarsStore.com. For a limited time, free shipping store-wide. This is going to run through the 4th of July. Everything at the store, free shipping. We really appreciate your support. We offer these kinds of sales, not only heavy discounts on items, I'm going to go through here in just a second, but free shipping store-wide. We have Brain Force Plus, 30% off. Super Male Vitality, 30% off. Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine, 30% off. Z-Shield, 30% off. InfoWars Select Storable Food, 30 to 40% off retail. And remember, this is free shipping. It'd be crazy not to stock up on a long-term food supply that is made in the USA, non-GMO, when you can get it 30 to 40% off and free shipping. Also, Emmerich's Essentials Outdoor Pack, 40% off retail. These are the types of things like insect repellent that doesn't have harmful, dangerous chemicals like DEET. It's natural chemicals to repel insects. This is the outdoor pack, 40% off retail. Again, Living Defense, 20% off. So you see things, most of these items, 30 to 40% off while supplies last, and free shipping. That's part of our 4th of July summer mega special, now live at InfoWarsStore.com. Now I want to finish up on this mess that we have with the neocons, Nikki Haley, with the FBI coming after Michael Flynn, getting him out, and then immediately we have this knee-jerk firing, claiming that it is a sarin gas attack. It looked exactly like what we had shut down in 2013. We told people this is an attempt by Obama to make the United States the Air Force of al-Qaeda. We have dropped supplies to them. We have trained them. We've given them money. We've given them support. We've told everybody that they're moderate rebels because they come up with all these different aliases. And now we want the government to act as their Air Force. That was what was happening 4 years ago. We had soldiers and sailors getting on social media, holding up pictures saying we will not be al-Qaeda's Air Force. That was shut down. We showed that that was a false narrative. This was a false narrative that happened on April the 4th. It was April the 6th that McMaster began taking over the National Security Council, and that was the result. Now, how did they get Flynn out? This story from Circa that came out yesterday evening talks about how the FBI launched a criminal probe against advisor Michael Flynn 2 years after the retired Army general roiled the Bureau's leadership by intervening on behalf of a decorated counterterrorism agent who accused now Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe and other top officials of sexual discrimination. This is according to documents and interviews that have now surfaced. So understand, Andrew McCabe, who is the FBI Director, acting FBI Director, he was the number 2 for Comey. He was the target, he was accused of sexual discrimination. Michael Flynn got involved. It was an unusual intervention, they said. It was on behalf of a supervisory special agent, Robin Gritz, a female. It was highly unusual, they said. It included a letter in 2014 on his official Pentagon stationery. This was a public interview in 2015 where he supported Gritz's case, and he offered to testify on her behalf. His offer put him in as a hostile witness in a case against Andrew McCabe, FBI director now, acting director, who was soaring through the Bureau's leadership ranks. The FBI sought to block Flynn's support for the agent. They asked a federal administrative law judge in May 2014 to keep Flynn and others from getting involved and from being witnesses in her EEOC case. 2 years later, the FBI opened its inquiry of Flynn. The EEO case, which is still pending, is serious enough to require McCabe to submit to a sworn statement to investigators. The deputy director's testimony provided some of the strongest evidence in the case of possible retaliation because, and listen to this, he admitted the FBI opened an internal investigation into Gritz's personal conduct after learning that she had filed and had intended to file a sex discrimination complaint against her supervisors. So once they found out she was accusing them of sexual discrimination, they went after her personally. And then once General Flynn got involved, because he had worked with her in terms of the security issues, and she was known to him, once he said that he was going to file on her behalf and testify on her behalf, they came after him. That's what it looks like now. Bureau employees who spoke on condition of anonymity for fear of retribution told Circa they did not know the reason for McCabe's displeasure with Flynn, but that it made them uncomfortable as the Russian probe began to unfold and pressure began to build to investigate Flynn. One employee even consulted a private lawyer. So these are people within the FBI saying this looks like this is retaliatory against General Flynn because he got involved on behalf of an employee who said she was sexually discriminated against by McCabe and others. Quote, as far as the troops in the field, the vast majority were disgusted with the Russia decision. But that was McCabe driving the result that eventually led former FBI Director James Comey to make the decision. McCabe, whose wife was running for office in Virginia, getting money from the Clinton Foundation. They say the Flynn leaks were nothing short of political, said one FBI employee. The leaks appeared to be targeted to take Flynn out. Documents and memos obtained by Circa detail how Flynn and other top officials at other government agencies in 2014 and 15 came to intervene in the EEOC case of Gritz, who rose over 2 decades to a supervisory special agent inside the FBI on strength of her counterterrorism work. For nearly a decade, she had worked with the intelligence community to help successfully track down global terrorists or to rescue Western hostages. This is how General Flynn knew her. But then, when she went to work under McCabe, her career took a sudden downturn under his leadership team in 2012, resulting in her first negative rating after years of outstanding performance reviews. She filed an EEOC complaint inside the FBI against a handful of Bureau executives in 2012, alleging her career was being derailed by sexual discrimination. So on her behalf, General Flynn says, I'm going to testify on her behalf. She's been an exemplary person. She's had a great record here. That got him involved with this case where we now know that Andrew McCabe began investigating her personally to try to get dirt on her. Then, from testimony of other FBI agents, it looks like McCabe came after Flynn as well. And this case is still not resolved. But it certainly does help Andrew McCabe to have sullied the reputation of Michael Flynn. So that's just one aspect of it. There's a personal aspect there. But I think an even more important aspect here is how the intelligence community took out people who were going to be opposed to their ever-widening conflict in Syria, opposed to their regime change. These are the people, the McMasters, the Petraeuses, the Nikki Haleys, who have pushed for regime change, pushed for chaos, and created chaos in Libya and elsewhere, and they're trying to do that in Syria. To create ISIS, to empower ISIS, to attack the people who are trying to stop ISIS. That is absolutely irresponsible. And as Trump supporters, we need to speak out against that. We need to shut down this reckless, dangerous action that could lead to World War III. Now I want to talk about what's going on with Sheriff Joe, because this is also something that really needs to get some publicity. We really need to contact Trump and the Department of Justice. Yesterday, we had a criminal trial that opened against former Sheriff Joe Arpaio to build his highly touted deportation force, they point out. Trump is now reviving a long-standing program that deputizes local officers to enforce federal immigration law. That was what Sheriff Joe was doing. And now we've got an activist judge who is trying to send him to jail for criminal contempt of this judge's order not to enforce immigration law. Arpaio's lawyer said the former sheriff is charged with a crime for cooperating with U.S. immigration officials. Say, under the Obama administration, it was a crime to cooperate with immigration officials. It was a crime to patrol the border. That's why the Border Patrol was so strong and outspoken in its support of Donald Trump. But what happened is we had Sheriff Joe's officers, they say, targeted immigrants who used fraudulent IDs to get jobs. Why would we want a sheriff to do that? I mean, we don't want to, if somebody comes into this country and violates the law, a foreign citizen comes here and criminally trespasses and thumbs their nose at the law, we shouldn't investigate that. If they use fraudulent IDs to get jobs, we shouldn't investigate that either. And if we have a sheriff who's going to enforce those kinds of laws, that sheriff needs to go to jail. So that's what the former Department of Justice, and I put that in quotes, air quotes, Department of Justice, that's what they said. That's what the former president said. And so the question is, why does the current Department of Justice continue to say that? Why is the current Department of Justice trying to crucify Sheriff Joe for trying to obey the law, for trying to follow policy that got Donald Trump elected, saying that he would enforce immigration law? His immigration powers were eventually stripped away by the courts and by the federal governments, just as the Border Patrol was. But I want you to look at how this is turning. The latest development in this is that former attorney of Sheriff Joe is forced to testify against him in violation of client-attorney privileges. A lawyer who once represented former Sheriff Joe Arpaio in a racial profiling case has testified that he had several meetings with Arpaio to discuss a court order that barred traffic patrols targeting immigrants. This is under a criminal contempt of court charge for prolonging the paroles after a judge ordered them stopped. And so they're penetrating this attorney-client privilege here, and they're even shutting down his ability to have a trial by jury. This judge does not want a jury. This judge wants to be the sole judge and jury of what's going on with Sheriff Arpaio. This is a kangaroo court case, and Sheriff Joe has tried to subpoena Jeff Sessions to testify. In late August of 2016, the Department of Justice, then under Loretta Lynch, formally filed criminal contempt of court charges against Sheriff Joe and others just 2 weeks before the election. They broke a long-standing tradition and protocol not to take action against sitting elected officials close to an election in order to avoid unduly influencing public opinion and interfering with an election. Isn't that just what we heard from James Comey? Isn't that what Loretta Lynch said when she said, we want to call this a matter because we don't want to interfere with the election of Hillary Clinton? So they backed off. But for Sheriff Joe, they did exactly the opposite. As a matter of fact, they decided to charge Sheriff Joe with a different statute of contempt of court than they did for 3 others that had been named in the referral. The other 3 defendants had their charges dropped because the statute of limitations had run its course. But the special charge that they put on Sheriff Joe got around the statute of limitations so that they could do it while he was running for re-election. Sheriff Joe was charged with a unique statute, a longer statute of limitations, in order to make those charges stick, to make it happen through the election, to do the most political damage to him as close to the election as possible. Even though the charges that the Department of Justice filed against Arpaio demand a trial by jury, the Department of Justice has vehemently fought in court to deny the sheriff his constitutional right to a trial by jury, which means that as they've appealed this to the Supreme Court without the Supreme Court stepping in, Sheriff Joe is going to face trial right now where he will be decided by one sitting federal judge. This is amazing. Prosecutors in the Department of Justice have opposed the bid for Attorney General Sessions to testify in this case. I just cannot understand, just as we're talking about with Jerome Corsi, the Fannie Freddie theft, one of the biggest bank robberies, I guess you could say, in history, where Obama went in and did a net asset sweep of private investors, of institutional investors. And this is the type of investment, as I've said before, that typically pension funds and people who are trying to save something for their retirement, they would invest in Fannie and Freddie because, hey, it looks like it's safe, right? It's a mortgage. And not only that, but it's a package of mortgages that are insured by the federal government. So somebody that's trying to preserve their capital for their retirement, trying to do the right thing, they would put their money there. And what you don't realize, what the public doesn't realize, is that although Fannie and Freddie got into a very difficult situation, just like the rest of the junk mortgages there, they collateralized a lot of junk stuff, and there were a lot of people who made a lot of money doing that. They got millions of dollars in bonuses, and the investors were left holding the bag. The federal government stepped in, took that over, and then it began to be profitable. Obama didn't have any way to fund his subsidies of Obamacare. Congress refused to do it. A judge ruled in favor of Congress and said, they have to appropriate the money. You can't do that, Obama. You can't move that money from somewhere else. So then what he did was he said, well, we're going to do a net asset sweep. We're just going to take it away from the Fannie and Freddie investors. We're going to do whatever we wish to do. And the Department of Justice appealed that decision. Now, Attorney General Sessions could stop the funding of Obamacare just by dropping that appeal. It's just that simple. That's all the Trump administration has to do to point out the bankruptcy of this nonsense. We have the Congressional Budget Office coming out with these scoring operations saying, we're going to look at the number of people that have their insurance, and that's going to be the standard by which we're going to determine whether this is a good bill or not. That is based on a lie. These people who, quote unquote, have insurance is based on theft. It is not anything that was done legally. And so that could be stopped by Attorney General Sessions. They could stop this persecution of Arpaio, but they don't. And the question is why? Why won't Attorney General Sessions step up, stop this appeal, stop this persecution of Sheriff Joe? You need to let them hear from you. You need to point this out. These are great injustices that are being done. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
It's been...
Wow, you're going to love the latest idea out of the EU. Ska Keller, a German member of the European Parliament and of the Green Party, said we should transplant entire villages from Syria to Germany, and that would encourage more migrants to enter Germany. Listen to these quotes. The idea of Syrian villages is only one possibility we can use. For example, if refugees don't want to go to a country alone that has no other refugees, people would rather go where compatriots already live, which makes integration and acceptance easier. Let's look at these 3 compatriots. From Paul Joseph Watson, Sweden, migrants viciously beat disabled man while calling him racist. 3 compatriot refugees attempted to steal a homeless man's wallet in a train station during an incident which took place last month. The handicapped man was kicked and punched and received a vicious uppercut as one of the migrants lectured him about war on Muslims and how all Swedes were racist. Now how's that for acceptance? You can read both articles now on Infowars.com. Rob J. reporting for Infowars.com and Infowars Nightly News.
I am very proud to announce the introduction of the highest quality InfoWars Biome Defense probiotic. We wanted to come out with the largest spectrum of high-quality, known probiotics that have been proven to improve overall digestion and health and detoxification in the body. Biome Defense is an exclusive blend of 50 billion live and active cultures from over 23 different probiotic strains that are known to support digestion and intestinal function. Our researchers are confident that we have been able to develop what will be the leading probiotic on the market. Secure your Biome Defense in ultra strength or regular strength at InfoWarsLife.com today and get started supporting your digestive system naturally. We've been testing this formula for years, but this is the limited first run to the public, so please take advantage of it today. Support your own health and support the InfoWar.
New from Emmerich's Essentials, fragrance-free natural deodorant for your body care needs. Playing basketball in the dry summer heat really makes me sweat. To maintain my game, I need all the confidence I can get. That's why I use Emmerich's Essentials natural deodorant, made with organic ingredients. This deodorant combines mineral crystals with natural botanicals to ionize odor, keeping me fresh throughout the day. While shooting hoops, the last thing I want is sweaty armpits making my hands slippery and the ball wet. That's why I recommend Emmerich's Essentials fragrance-free deodorant. Even though it's unscented, it's effective at combating strong body odor, and I don't have to worry about any unwanted allergic reactions to my sensitive skin. Whether you're a guy or gal, the last thing you want to be worried about is your deodorant. No petroleum-based ingredients, 100% natural and cruelty-free. Stay in the game with Emmerich's Essentials fragrance-free natural deodorant. Available at InfoWarsStore.com.
I say I shot the sheriff, but I swear it was in self-defense. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're going to take another look at this Project Veritas recording, one of these recordings where they talk about a witch hunt. This is a CNN producer saying the same thing that we've been saying over and over again, but he's saying it candidly to somebody that he is just talking to privately. But we have also released this new contest, an update. CNN is Fake News Contest, $200,000 in cash prizes. This is a new contest we put out here. CNN is Fake News, $1,000 prize for anyone who's seen on TV with a CNN is Fake News sign, or a legible self-made T-shirt, a $2,500 prize for anyone who's seen on TV with a CNN is Fake News sign or T-shirt. Also heard to say CNN is fake news, Infowars.com is real. Now, why are we doing this? We're doing this to encourage you, the listener, to realize that you have the power to save civilization from the criminal cabal that is controlling humanity and its fake news propaganda machine, especially CNN. They're the poster child for this fake news media, especially this last week. Now, we have this constant back and forth. We sell our products. That's what funds our operation. That's what funds these contests like this. And we really do appreciate your support. It's absolutely essential. It is your contribution to the war, and we offer you the very best products. It is, as Alex has pointed out, a win-win situation, or he calls it a 360-degree win. You know, it is not a zero-sum game. We can give you great quality products that you're not going to find anywhere else, like toothpaste that's got nano silver in it and iodine and doesn't have fluoride. You're not going to find that anywhere else. We put that out there for you at a very competitive price, and that funds our operation. It helps your health. It is a win-win situation. We have one of those going on right now, the 4th of July sale that is going on at InfoWarsStore.com. Free shipping store-wide on everything. We have 30 to 40% off selected items. We have 30% off Brain Force, Super Male Vitality, Survival Shield, X2 Nascent Iodine, Z-Shield. We have 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select storable food. And remember, this is free shipping as well. So 30 to 40% off plus free shipping while supplies last. And also we have Emmerich's Central Outdoor Pack, 40% off retail. That's a new product that's come out. That's all natural ingredients to help you protect yourself. Suntan lotion, bug repellent that's going to be safe and effective for your use. That's what funds our operation. We don't get money from J.P. Morgan. We don't get money from big pharmaceutical companies. We get money from our listeners who support us, and that allows us to run things and to put this money back into the InfoWar with things like this CNN is Fake News contest. And to give you another sample of just how fake CNN is. We've got a little bit of time left in this segment. I want to play again the CNN producer caught by James O'Keefe and Project Veritas talking about how they know this is a witch hunt.
I think that there are a lot of liberal CNN viewers who want to see Trump really get scrutinized, and I think if we would have behaved that way with President Obama and scrutinized everything that he was doing with as much scrutiny as we applied to Donald Trump, I think our viewers would have been turned off. I think they would have thought like we were attacking him, but I think our viewers right now, and I'm not saying all of our viewers are super liberals. Right. I think there's just a lot of them, and
so Trump's good for business, you're saying?
Trump is good for business right now.
So they're going to tell their listeners what they want to hear, whether it's true or not. You understand?
Could be bullshit. I mean, it's mostly bullshit right now. We don't have any big giant proof. But then they say, well, there's still an investigation going on, and you're like, yeah. I don't know. If you were finding something, we'd know about it. The way these leaks happen, they leak it. It leak.
That's the key point. Let's hold it right there. You know, that's the key point. And I think that's another important point for all of us to understand as well. You know, when I talk about these situations with Syria, when I talk about what elements inside the Trump administration are doing, some of you may not like to hear that, but Trump needs to hear from you. You need to stand with Trump on what he campaigned on. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Visit GCNlive.com today.
The struggle in the DNC fraud lawsuit continues. You've had the current counsel for the plaintiffs request that the judge provide witness protection. That notion was rejected despite 3 mysterious deaths of potential witnesses in the case: Seth Rich, Sean Lucas, and Barrington Wisenant Jr. There are also stalwarts in the justice system that are trying to have this case dropped entirely, despite the obvious glaring issues that the DNC has had over the course of the last 2 years. While the lawsuit represents Bernie Sanders supporters who feel they have been wronged by the DNC, Bernie Sanders has fallen silent on the issue. Donald Trump tweeted out this weekend, Hillary Clinton colluded with the Democrat Party in order to beat crazy Bernie Sanders. Is she allowed to collude? Unfair to Bernie. So now Donald Trump has done more to raise awareness for the DNC fraud lawsuit than Bernie Sanders has, who actually is the one that had the election stolen from him. Why is Bernie Sanders silent on the issue? Maybe I guess he's busy with being investigated by the FBI for bank fraud. For Infowars.com, this is Owen Schroyer.
Leading a frontal assault on the lies of the New World Order, it's Alex Jones. Before America can be great again, she must be free again. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. Coming up in the next segment, and really is coming up in the next segment. I announced it last hour, but I was a little bit ahead of time. We have the authors of The Convenient Terrorist. And, of course, this is whistleblower John Kiriakou, a former CIA officer, the one who blew the whistle on the illegal torturing of people. They called it enhanced interrogation. But unfortunately, the people who are actually doing the torturing, the people who are actually breaking the law, nothing happened to them. As we typically see, it's the whistleblower who goes to jail. Now, he's written a book along with Joseph Hickman, who's former U.S. Marine, senior research fellow for the Center for Policy and Research, talking about a very high-profile case. I think you're going to find this to be a very, very interesting story. And it all goes back to what is true, what is real. Are we going to put out a narrative that feeds the government side here, and we're going to continue down this story, down this government narrative, regardless of the facts? See, that's the thing that we need. When we heard that last clip, and we heard the CNN guy say, he goes, we wouldn't have done this with President Obama. It would have alienated our audience. Our audience supported Obama, their liberal audience, and so we wouldn't have attacked him that way. We're going to attack Donald Trump because that's the confirmation bias of our audience. We need to make sure that we as conservatives do not fall into a confirmation bias. There are higher principles involved. We want the rule of law. We want the Bill of Rights that we have as individuals that is so precious in this country. And we do not want to throw that away for anybody. I believe that with Donald Trump, we have an opportunity as somebody who thinks independently, and we have the ability to make these arguments with him. If we disagree with him on policy, we should never blindly follow anybody into battle. But there's certain areas, like we have seen with the climate accord, with the actions in Syria, where there's a division within the Trump administration. We have the opportunity to weigh in on the side of candidate Trump. Weigh in on the side of candidate Trump with President Trump. Remind him what he ran on. Remind him of the principles. Remind him of what he saw in Syria 4 years ago when he called it out as being false. Remind him of the false intelligence that was used to get us involved in Iraq. And make sure that he doesn't listen to elements within the government that are trying to push him in that direction in Syria now. It's very important that we speak up and just not take a backseat and say we're going to let President Trump do whatever he wants to do. We're going to support him regardless of what he does. That is what we've seen far too many people do on the left. We don't want to fall into that kind of mindless support for any candidate. We want to stay with our principles. That's why it is so important for us to talk to people who are whistleblowers, who will go to jail if necessary to get the truth out there. Now, before we go to them, I just want to play one more clip here, because when we're talking about what's going on with CNN, we're talking about this false narrative that they sell for money, this false narrative that they sell for audience. It's also about their self-absorption. And I think nobody embodies that better than Jim Acosta and his temper tantrums about the White House press corps not being televised. Just continually in this White House press release that they had, I'm looking at the transcript here, obsessing about the fact that there's no camera that he can get on to show his face. There's no camera, Jim. You have an obligation to put the camera on. You know, you are a public servant and you need to televise us. I mean, the information is getting out there. This is simply about him posing for the cameras. Let's play a clip of him accosting Spicer. This is Jim Acosta accosting Spicer at the White House press conference.
Sean, can you answer whether the president still believes the question?
There's no camera on, Jim.
Well, maybe we should turn the cameras on, Sean. Why don't we turn the cameras on? Why don't we turn the cameras on?
Put the cameras on. I want to be on camera.
Why not turn the cameras on, Sean? They're in the room. The lights are on.
Have been a drastic shift, starting from maybe the week before the president took his first trip abroad, that now we see you on camera about once a week. Is that a new normal that we would expect?
Men, give your body the support it needs with InfoWars Life Prostagard. It's time to start assisting the body in regulating proper prostate balance. InfoWars Life has set out to bring you formulations that are not only the highest quality out there, but formulas that you can use on a daily basis to give your body the natural herbs and extracts that our experts recommend. The Prostagard formula does just that, with its mixture of plant-based nutrients and antioxidants that help give your body total support. It's a hand-selected blend of saw palmetto, lycopene, plant sterols, zinc, vitamin D3, selenium, and copper. Prostagard is something that the men on the InfoWars crew take every day. And from our research, it's something that men should really be adding to their daily regimen in order to keep their body going at optimal levels. Now's the time to start naturally supporting your body. Get Prostagard on your side today, exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.
Protect your skin with SPF 30 sunscreen lotion by Emmerich Essentials. Perfect for face and body, this natural unscented sunscreen can be worn at all times of the day whenever you need sun protection. We source ingredients from nature, producing a product free of harmful chemicals and toxins. This natural lotion contains 21% zinc oxide, which is the largest particle size used, and we do not use nanoparticles. The larger the particle, the safer it is for your body. The organic oils help hydrate the skin, leaving it nice and smooth. The truly natural fragrance-free sunscreen for the most sensitive skin. Emmerich Essentials wants you to enjoy the sun and strives to bring you organic products to enhance your life. Naturally protect your skin with SPF 30 sunscreen lotion by Emmerich Essentials. Stop exposing yourself and your family to toxic ingredients. Visit InfoWarsStore.com and learn more about the new SPF 30 sunscreen lotion.
The struggle in the DNC fraud lawsuit continues. You've had the current counsel for the plaintiffs request that the judge provide witness protection. That notion was rejected despite 3 mysterious deaths of potential witnesses in the case: Seth Rich, Sean Lucas, and Barrington Wisenant Jr. There are also stalwarts in the justice system that are trying to have this case dropped entirely, despite the obvious glaring issues that the DNC has had over the course of the last 2 years. While the lawsuit represents Bernie Sanders supporters who feel they have been wronged by the DNC, Bernie Sanders has fallen silent on the issue. Donald Trump tweeted out this weekend, Hillary Clinton colluded with the Democrat Party in order to beat crazy Bernie Sanders. Is she allowed to collude? Unfair to Bernie. So now Donald Trump has done more to raise awareness for the DNC fraud lawsuit than Bernie Sanders has, who actually is the one that had the election stolen from him. Why is Bernie Sanders silent on the issue? Maybe I guess he's busy with being investigated by the FBI for bank fraud. For Infowars.com, this is Owen Schroyer.
You found it, the tip of the spear. It is the Alex Jones Show with David Knight.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we have a very important interview here. I think you're really going to enjoy this. Got a couple of individuals here, and I'm reading from the introduction to the book, The Convenient Terrorist, Joseph Hickman and John Kiriakou, 2 whistleblowers who defied the awesome power of the U.S. national security colossus to tell their fellow Americans the truth about the endless war on terror. As Hickman and Kiriakou write here, this war has plunged the country into a weird wonderland where truth is fiction, where allies become enemies, and vice versa. And the greatest threats to America are often generated by those in charge of protecting us. Hickman, a U.S. Army and Marine veteran who blew the whistle on the abuse of prisoners at Guantanamo Bay prison complex, and Kiriakou, a CIA veteran who served time in prison for exposing the agency's use of torture. That's right, it's the whistleblowers who go to jail, not the people who break the law in the government. They're uniquely qualified to tell the sordid epic of Abu Zubaydah, the convenient terrorist whom the U.S. exploited to justify their own reign of terror in the Middle East. A very timely story because, of course, this is, as they just said, this is endless. And we now see it ramping up again in Syria, getting into very dangerous territory. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And we've got you on 2 different locations. So this will be now let me talk to John here first. John, I had the pleasure of interviewing you once before, and just as an introduction to our audience, from that interview, I remember we talked about the fact that you had 10 exceptional performance awards. You were the one who actually captured this individual that we're going to talk about. You got a 2016 Sam Adams Award, again, as you exposed the Bush-era torture program. You're the only person jailed, not the torturers who violated the law. You were jailed, and you wrote a couple of books already, The Reluctant Spy, My Secret Life in the CIA's War on Terror, and Doing Time Like a Spy, How the CIA Taught Me to Survive and Thrive in Prison. Now, this book, The Convenient Terrorist. Let me ask you the first question, and then we will get to Mr. Hickman. Why the focus on this particular individual by the U.S. government?
Well, we believe that the CIA back in 2001 and early 2002 that Abu Zubaydah was the number 3 person in Al-Qaeda. Vice President Dick Cheney echoed that in the press. He said that Abu Zubaydah was the number 3, that Abu Zubaydah was one of the masterminds of the 9/11 attacks. And so we pulled out all the stops to track him down. It took us about 6 weeks, but we found him in a safe house in Faisalabad, Pakistan. And when all was said and done, it turned out that he was not the number 3 in Al-Qaeda. In fact, he had never joined Al-Qaeda. He had never pledged fealty to Osama bin Laden. So we had this with this guy in our custody. He was certainly a bad guy. He acted as a logistician for Al-Qaeda. He ran the training camps for Al-Qaeda. He ran the House of Martyrs safe house in Peshawar, Pakistan for Al-Qaeda. But he was not an Al-Qaeda mastermind and certainly not an Al-Qaeda leader.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, I think. And you pointed that out in this book. You said, we want to try to say that, some guy is either an Al-Qaeda guy or he's an innocent lamb. This guy was certainly not an innocent lamb. I mean, he became a guinea pig for the torture program of the CIA, but he was not an innocent lamb. But he, on the other hand, was not the number 3 guy in Al-Qaeda. And that was, I think, the key part of what they were selling. The narrative that they sold America was that, hey, we got the leadership. Why didn't they get other leaders if they were able to get the number 3 guy?
Oh, you're exactly right. You know, in those early days after the 9/11 attacks, we really believed that we were hot on the trail of Osama bin Laden, Ayman al-Zawahiri. We had learned about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and certainly we caught Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in August of 2002. But you're right, Abu Zubaydah was the first high-level capture. So why didn't that lead to any other high-level captures? It's because he just simply didn't have the information. And David, you make an important point here too, and that is that so many of us in government wanted to believe that everything was black and white, that you're either a good guy or you're a bad guy. And that's just simply not the case here. Abu Zubaydah was somebody who meant us harm. Abu Zubaydah was somebody who meant to recruit jihadis to fight against the United States. But he was not one of the masterminds of 9/11, as the CIA and the White House wanted us to believe, while at the same time, he was not the innocent naif that his defense attorneys want us to believe.
Let me talk to Joseph Hickman here, because in the introduction to the book, you were talking about when you looked at the Senate Intelligence Committee's declassified report, Mr. Hickman, and you said you were interested to see what they were going to say about Abu Zubaydah, whether he was going to be mentioned, and he was mentioned 1,000 times in that report. Your comment on what your thoughts were with that, and what you saw there as somebody who exposed the abuses at Gitmo.
Well, when I first heard that there was when there, he was in it 1,000 times, and it was, he was waterboarded 83 times. My thoughts actually went right to my friend John Kiriakou. I mean, he's the one that really said it before anyone accepted it. And I mean, what his revelations were actually on paper then. Mm-hmm. And it was when I realized I had to get a hold of John. Let's set the record straight on who Zubaydah is. It needs to be done, because right now, still government officials are still claiming he was Al-Qaeda, and it's just not true.
And you said that you had learned everything in his biography. You had analyzed his all the government documents about him. You had interviewed him, his family, his friends and associates. You were absolutely certain that he was not the number 3 guy in Al-Qaeda.
Absolutely not. It's no way. He was not affiliated with Al-Qaeda at all. And in a sense, I mean, he did Al-Qaeda terrorists did go through his training camp. Al-Qaeda members did go through there, but it was not. He was never a member of Al-Qaeda, and that was a big problem too. I think with the government right after 9/11, we were chasing these guys with the mentality of the American mafia, looking for Al-Qaeda operatives with that mentality, and it just doesn't work in the Middle East.
So this guy, safe to say, would be kind of like a low-level fish, and they tried to make him into a kingpin because they needed to win. Would that be correct to take a look at it from that standpoint? They needed to have a high-profile victory, so they wanted to make this guy into a high-profile leader, even though he was a low-level terrorist within the periphery of Al-Qaeda. They wanted him to be a high-level kingpin so they could look good on paper. And in order to make that happen, they began the waterboarding. Is that would that be safe to say? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true, and that's the specific reason why the CIA began its torture program. The dirty little secret of that torture program is that the FBI, in the form of former FBI agent Ali Soufan, was actually making progress with Abu Zubaydah at this secret prison overseas. He was sitting across the table from Abu Zubaydah, treating him with respect. He established a rapport. They established a nascent relationship, and Abu Zubaydah began to open up to him and was actually giving us actionable information, actionable intelligence that we were to use to try to dismantle the Al-Qaeda network in Germany. But it takes time to establish that kind of relationship, and the CIA grew very frustrated. They believed Abu Zubaydah was holding back, which we now know from the Senate torture report and the CIA Inspector General's report was just simply not true. He was not holding back. And so they started to torture him, and they tortured him mercilessly. And to what end? He never gave us anything else of any value once the torture began.
I remember when we had the previous interview and you were talking about the fact you were there when they captured this guy. And he was shot, fairly seriously wounded, and you were there at his bedside when he came to. And what did he say to you?
The first thing he said is that he asked me to kill him. He asked me to smother him with a pillow. And I told him, oh, no, nobody's going to kill you, Abu Zubaydah. We've been looking for you for a long time. And I told him, I'm the nicest guy that you're going to meet in this experience. My colleagues in the CIA, they're not as nice as I am. So if I can give you one piece of advice, it's that you have to cooperate. And he said, you seem like a nice man, but you're the enemy, and I'll never cooperate. Well, as he calmed down a little bit, we had longer and longer conversations. And one of the things that he said that really struck me at the time was that he did not want to attack the United States on 9/11. He wanted to attack Israel. He's Palestinian, and he said all he ever wanted to do was to kill Jews. But he was overruled. And the reason he was overruled is because he simply was not the number 3 in Al-Qaeda. He just simply did not have that kind of authority or that kind of access to bin Laden and Zawahiri and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
You know, I think it's interesting. Let's talk a little bit about, and either one of you can address this, let's talk a little bit about just the pragmatic aspect of torture in terms of getting what you want out of these people. Because there are legal issues, there are ethical issues, and I don't want to downplay those. If we lose our ethical and legal foundations, we don't exist as a society. We become the monsters that we try to kill. But let's just talk about the pragmatic aspect of this, because a lot of people don't really care about law and ethics anymore in this country. Let's talk about getting what we want out of these people, shutting them down, stopping an attack, and the typical thing that you always see, the ticking time bomb scenario that's from 24 that the media gave to us. Address those issues for us.
Yeah, do you mind if I jump in first?
Sure, go ahead.
I love this ticking time bomb scenario because it's just such fantasy. It only happens in the movies. It just never happens in real life. So you're right. Let's say ethics and legality and morality aside. Let's say we start torturing someone because we want to extract the information.
You know, hang on there, John. We got to take a quick break. I've got a hard break here. I went a little bit long on that intro to that question. We're going to get the answer from John. We're going to hold on to your ticking time bomb because we're going to have the answer when we come back.
The supporters of InfoWars, not just here in the U.S., but around the world, are the cutting-edge vanguard of the reawakening of the sleeping giant that is human liberty. Again, I want to thank you all humbly for fighting the globalist. I want to thank you for your financial support. You're the reasons we're still here and growing in the face of an unprecedented onslaught. That's why this July 4th, we're having some of the biggest sales ever. We have store-wide free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com through July 4th. And on top of that, we have savings as much as 40% off best-selling items. And we're talking about things you need: a wide spectrum of high-quality, non-GMO heirloom seeds, high-quality storable foods, and amazing, groundbreaking supplements and nutraceuticals. Our incredible nootropic Brain Force Plus, 30% off, and now with 20% more in each bottle. Super Mel Vitality, sold out for months. Concentrated herbs that have absolutely changed my life and so many others, 30% off as well. Deep Earth, Pure Iodine, X2, now back in stock, 30% off. Z-Shield, our newest product out of the gates, 30% off because it's so amazing and I want you to try it. Emmerich's Essentials Outdoor Special. We're talking our non-nano zinc, incredibly concentrated, high-powered sunscreen, along with Emmerich's Essentials Bug Spray that's totally organic and natural and works way better than chemical brands I've personally used. On that particular special at 40% off, if you get the additional auto ship 10% off, we're talking about a loss leader. this July 4th, celebrating our republic, celebrating worldwide freedom, and celebrating returning America to its place in the world as a true shining city on a hill where people want to come here to celebrate free market and an open society, not to celebrate a globalist, politically correct cesspool of infighting and mind control. Vitamin Mineral Fusion. Visit InfoWarsLife.com to secure your canister. We have worked for years with our chemists and scientists to create the most powerful and affordable, great-tasting multivitamin formula available. Vitamin Mineral Fusion Drink Mix at InfoWarsLife.com is loaded with a full month's supply of essential vitamins, minerals, and amino acids that your body absolutely needs. In the history of InfoWars Life, we've brought out a lot of amazing products like Survival Shield X2, Super Male Vitality, and so many others. With its unique delivery system and proprietary manufacturing process designed for maximized effects, this formula is the platinum standard of multivitamin mineral products. And this part is most important. The ingredients in Vitamin Mineral Fusion are either plant-derived or of the highest quality lab standard. That means it's clean. That means it's pure. And rest assured, you're fighting the tip of the spear in the info war. That's InfoWarsLife.com and Vitamin Mineral Fusion. Take action now before we sell out.
Men, give your body the support it needs with InfoWars Life Prostagard. It's time to start assisting the body in regulating proper prostate balance. InfoWars Life has set out to bring you formulations that are not only the highest quality out there, but formulas that you can use on a daily basis to give your body the natural herbs and extracts that our experts recommend. The Prostagard formula does just that, with its mixture of plant-based nutrients and antioxidants that help give your body total support. It's a hand-selected blend of saw palmetto, lycopene, plant sterols, zinc, vitamin D3, selenium, and copper. Prostagard is something that the men on the InfoWars crew take every day. And from our research, it's something that men should really be adding to their daily regimen in order to keep their body going at optimal levels. Now's the time to start naturally supporting your body. Get Prostagard on your side today, exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.
Well, I'm not the kind to kiss and tell, but I've been seen with Farrah. I've never...
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to a couple of very important whistleblowers. Two whistleblowers who blew the whistle on torture, on terror, on secret wars, and the lies of the CIA. The book is called The Convenient Terrorist. We're talking to Joseph Hickman and to John Kiriakou. John actually went to jail because he blew the whistle on waterboarding. But, of course, the people who actually violated the law, calling it enhanced torture, did not go to jail. And so we ran out of time in the last segment. I had just asked John about the pragmatic aspects of this. We always see the dramatization and 24 and these other stories about the ticking time bomb. We have no time left. We've got to torture this guy to stop this terrorist act from happening. Your response to the real world, somebody who's been there and actually done it. John, what's your response to the ticking time bomb scenario?
My response is there really is no such thing. What happens is you start torturing this guy, and finally he tells you what he thinks you want to hear. So in addition, he tells you a million other things. And what you have to do is turn that information over to an analyst or to a team of analysts to pore over the information and figure out what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. In the meantime, 6 weeks have passed and the bomb has already gone off. So it doesn't work. You know, and I would tell people who say that that it does work, that's not the issue. There are a lot of things that work. Rape works. We don't rape prisoners, at least we're not supposed to. Mm-hmm. Killing their children in front of them works, but it's morally reprehensible. We would never do such a thing. So the issue isn't, does it work? The issue is it legal? Is it moral? And is it ethical? We're a nation of laws. Whether we like it or not, we have to follow those laws. And if we don't like the laws, we have a mechanism to change them. But you just can't start torturing people willy-nilly and hope everything comes out well.
And I think that's the other key, too. You know, a lot of people will look at this and say, well, you know, you're on your moral high horse and, you know, we just don't have the time for ethics or for law or whatever. We have to understand that if we allow our government to violate the law, to terrorize people, that is the worst possible scenario that can come out of this. We do not want to turn our government agents into terrorists themselves. Once they do that, there is nothing to protect us from them. That is the most dangerous possible outcome, is that we become criminals and terrorists. And that I think that's the key part for me when I look at this. I do not want to see, just as we're looking at this election, and as the FISA court has said that we have law enforcement and the NSA have violated the laws, the FISA court made their ruling. They declassified this so we could all see it. The worst possible scenario is to have our intelligence community become this politicized East German or Orwellian service that is now operating at the behest of politicians to attack other people and use the apparatus, the full apparatus of the intelligence community. And the same thing is true, I think, of torture and other issues like that. Joseph Hickman, you were there at Gitmo. You blew the whistle on things that were happening there. What can you tell us about other things that happened to prisoners, other prisoners besides Abu Zubaydah, who was tortured? What about other prisoners who were tortured there, and what happened?
Well, you know, the CIA had a secret black site there at Guantanamo. We weren't really sure what they were doing there, but they would transport detainees to that site a few times a month. And actually, when I was there in 2006 and 2007, they were doing roughly 200 interrogations a week. And the CIA, I'm not sure how many they were doing at their black site. But one thing for sure happened when I was there. 3 detainees were transported to that black site, and on the evening of June 9, 2006. And those 3 detainees came back from that site dead. Mm-hmm. So I don't know exactly what happened in there or how it happened, but they were there was 3 detainees that were killed that night.
Now, we're talking about that being a black site. I mean, is the legal fiction that we're operating under here is that because the CIA is doing it at Guantanamo Bay, which is in Cuba, that doesn't really fall in the jurisdiction of U.S. laws or somehow? Are they playing that game or?
Well, it's a DOD facility, Guantanamo Camp America, where all the detainees are held. But right outside of there was a CIA facility that was not supposed to be there at all.
I see.
And it wasn't supposed to be operational.
And that's something that we see all the time. I mean, just the idea of using the semantics of enhanced interrogation for things that had been recognized in the past. Waterboarding was prosecuted as a war crime by the American government at the end of World War II when the Japanese did it. But then when the CIA does it, they've got a slick lawyer who comes in and writes a book called Company Man, and he rebrands it as enhanced interrogation. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Joseph Hickman and John Kiriakou. I want to get their feel for what they think in terms of the public perception of this and the public's support for torture, even after they see the details. We'll be right back.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
This July 4th, we're having some of the biggest sales ever. Our incredible nootropic Brain Force Plus, 30% off, and now with 20% more in each bottle. Super Mel Vitality, sold out for months. Concentrated herbs that have absolutely changed my life and so many others, 30% off as well. So again, I want to thank you all for your support. I want to thank you for your prayers. You have changed the world, and I want to encourage you to continue to change the world and to accelerate your resistance.
Wow, you're going to love the latest idea out of the EU. Ska Keller, a German member of the European Parliament and of the Green Party, said we should transplant entire villages from Syria to Germany, and that would encourage more migrants to enter Germany. Listen to these quotes. The idea of Syrian villages is only one possibility we can use. For example, if refugees don't want to go to a country alone that has no other refugees, people would rather go where compatriots already live, which makes integration and acceptance easier. Let's look at these 3 compatriots. From Paul Joseph Watson, Sweden, migrants viciously beat disabled man while calling him racist. 3 compatriot refugees attempted to steal a homeless man's wallet in a train station during an incident which took place last month. The handicapped man was kicked and punched and received a vicious uppercut as one of the migrants lectured him about war on Muslims and how all Swedes were racist. Now how's that for acceptance? You can read both articles now on Infowars.com. Rob Dew reporting for Infowars.com and Infowars Nightly News.
It's more critical than than ever to recommit to financially support the broadcast and to get great products back in exchange. A 360 win. Emmerich's Essentials Outdoor Special. We're talking our non-nano zinc, high-powered sunscreen, along with Emmerich's Essentials bug spray that's totally organic and natural and works way better than chemical brands I've personally used. Help fund this organization that you know has been successful fighting tyranny on every front. We have private labeled it, and it is the exact same product, just the name is different. Emmerich's Essentials. It's on average 20% off. On top of that, if you sign up for auto ship, you get an additional 25% off. Emmerich's Essentials is all about personal care, hygiene, not getting skin cancer, not getting bit by a bunch of bugs and mosquitoes. It's all there. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, and you'll find Emmerich's Essentials. You've got to have the will to accept the truth and buck the system and the group collective. Do that, and you'll earn your way to the next level. This is the InfoWar.
Live from the Infowars.com studios, you're listening to The Alex Jones Show. And now, your host, David Knight.
Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Joseph Hickman, John Kiriakou, two whistleblowers about torture and terror and the secret wars and the lies of the CIA. The book is called The Convenient Terrorist. And they focus on one individual who, although he was a terrorist, although he was involved with Al-Qaeda, the government needed somebody who was a high-profile individual. So they built him up as the number 3 in Al-Qaeda, which their book points out he clearly was not. And in order to make that case, he was subjected to quite a bit of torture. How much torture was he subjected to, John? Do you know? He was waterboarded.
Oh, it was merciless. He was waterboarded 83 times, but beyond the waterboarding, we did other things to him that I always thought were worse than waterboarding. We subjected him to what was called a cold cell, where we stripped him naked, we chained him to an eye bolt in the ceiling so he couldn't sit or kneel or get comfortable in any way, and then we chilled the cell to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and every hour threw a bucket of ice water on him. We actually killed prisoners using that method. We also subjected him to sleep deprivation for as long as 7 days. People begin losing their minds at day 7. They begin dying at day 9. He also had a terrible fear of insects. And so we put him in a dog cage for 2 weeks and then dumped a box of cockroaches on him just to make him crazy.
Wow.
So there was a lot.
Well, that is straight out of...
It went on for quite some time.
That's straight out of George Orwell's 1984, where they put the guy's head in a cage and release the rats on him. I mean, that's absolutely, it's just diabolical that we would be doing that sort of thing. So when you look at this and we get some of this information out to people, and we still have a lot of Americans supporting a torture program. We see a lot of polls where they support that, even though we talk about these details, they say, well, we're fine with that. I mean, what is your response to that? Either one of you.
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Joe.
Really do it. Well, I think go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Please, John, go ahead.
Go ahead, John. We'll let you go first.
Okay, thanks. I'm always disappointed in these polls. We see these polls come out with some regularity, saying that fully a majority of Americans support a torture program. And the only thing that I can conclude is that Americans don't understand what torture entails, and Americans don't understand the law. We have a federal torture act in this country that specifically prohibits exactly those techniques that we used against Abu Zubaydah and other Al-Qaeda prisoners. We are signatories to the United Nations Convention Against Torture, which has the force of law here in the United States. And people don't understand, David, that very fact that you mentioned a few moments ago, that in the aftermath of the Second World War, we executed Japanese soldiers who waterboarded American prisoners of war. It's always been illegal. It continues to be illegal, and it shouldn't be done by Americans.
Yeah, and let me put it from the standpoint of some of the people who were involved in it, who now they actually do know what is involved with this. The New York Times just a few days ago had a story talking about a couple of individuals. Maybe you guys know their names: John Bruce Jessen, James Mitchell. These 15 years after they helped devise brutal interrogation techniques used on terrorism suspects in secret CIA prisons. Jessen and Mitchell. Jessen is a former military psychologist. He expressed ambivalence about the program. He described himself and fellow military psychologist Mitchell as reluctant participants in using the techniques, some of which are widely viewed as torture, but also justify the practices as effective in getting resistance detainees to cooperate. One of the things that he said in this, though, he goes back to this ticking time bomb scenario. They said they were pressured by the military in order to do this. They said, this is urgent. We've got to do this. So we want you to, and this gets to their ethical issues, the Hippocratic oath that doctors and psychologists have taken. To violate that oath in order to do this, they were played just as the American public has been played by films like, series like 24 and so forth. And even when we look, gentlemen, at things like polls, this last election was a reminder that polls can be twisted, may not have any basis in reality. They may be using, and frequently do, use polls to push an agenda or to push a candidate or to push an issue. And they don't always honestly report the results in these polls. So your comments about those two things there.
Well, I think it's true. I think that we can't trust polls at all. I do believe there's a lot of Americans that still think it's okay to torture people, but they're just not educated on the subject. And I don't think they'd want their sons or daughters to be torturers growing up. And I mean, these cases were brutal. The things that they did to Zebeda was absolutely brutal. If you have a technique called anal rehydration or anal feeding, there's something wrong there.
Yes.
It's not a good thing. So absolutely. I mean, the polls. I don't believe, but I still think there's people that need to be educated and know exactly what we're doing. People out there.
Well, let's talk about, when we look at this and we talk about rendition and other things, one of the things that really concerned a lot of us who are libertarians was the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, where Barack Obama, they put the clause in there saying that American citizens could be indefinitely detained by the military for an indefinite amount of time, okay? And when we look at that, I think the people who are going to buy into this on a pragmatic basis and say these are dangerous people, and they are. They need to be stopped, and they absolutely need to be stopped. But as I pointed out before, what do we do when our government starts adopting these types of practices? Will you be the next Abu Zubaydah, okay, when this happens? Look at people like Richard Jewell, who was falsely accused. We had NBC News and CNN have to give him an undisclosed amount in terms of settlement. For 6 months, this guy was attacked in the press. He was a hero, basically, in the Olympic Park bombing. He was a security guard there in Atlanta. But then he became falsely identified as the individual responsible for this, and he was vilified in the press. What if they'd had NDAA at that point in time? What if they'd had a more aggressive approach to that? What if they had taken him and disappeared him so that he was not able to go through due process, not able to confront his accusers, not able to have a trial by jury? All of these things that are so precious, because throughout history and our own history, our own Western civilization, we've had star chambers that come in and take people and remove them in the dead of night, and you never see them again. We do not want to allow that to happen in the United States. This has happened throughout Central and South America, where the CIA has been involved heavily. We do not want to see this happening to our own citizens. So I would say to people, look at the case of Richard Jewell, for example. Look at the NDAA. I mean, what would the two of you say about that?
There was a slippery slope where it came to our civil liberties during the Obama administration. When you have the Attorney General of the United States tell a sitting senator during a congressional hearing, this is Senator Rand Paul, that the president reserves the right to kill an American citizen on U.S. soil because he believes him to be an imminent danger, but without any due process, without ever being accused of a crime, without ever being afforded the right to face his accusers in a court of law, then there's a real problem. It is a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope toward tyranny, and I think that that for a very long time we saw this happen at the topmost places in government. There was almost nobody to stand up and say, "Stop! This is wrong."
Yeah. Let's talk about what's happening to these prisoners right now who are still there, because this particular guy is still there, isn't he, in the system?
Yes, he's held without charge or any due process whatsoever.
Still being held.
Yes.
To your knowledge, is he still being tortured?
No, he's not being tortured.
Okay. And what is the current official status? I mean, do we know if the CIA has stopped these torture programs, or have they said they have? Is there any way to verify if they really have, if they said that they have?
Well, there's almost no way to verify. President Obama did sign an executive order stopping the Bush-era torture program. But what he did not sign was an order stopping extraordinary rendition, which, frankly, is just about as bad. An extraordinary rendition is, let's say you are an Egyptian, and I capture you in Pakistan. Well, instead of sending you back to Egypt to face justice, I send you to some place like Algeria or Morocco or Jordan or Libya. And with a wink and a nod, I tell the intelligence service in that country, hey, please don't torture this guy, but let us know everything that he says. Well, the reason we sent him there in the first place was to torture him and to disappear him.
Yes.
So it's, without getting our hands too terribly dirty, we still kind of push the same policy.
Yeah, we can prevaricate around the bush, and we can pretend that we're not the ones doing it, although we're the ones who are initiating it. Let me ask you about the situation that we have going on right now in Syria, because there's a lot of back and forth as to who these individuals are. And as somebody who's been trying to track down terrorists, and we see these people in Syria with their constantly evolving labels, they're called moderate rebels, or they change the name of their organization. I mean, what is your general take on what's going on there? I mean, from what you're looking at, does it look to you as if it would be your assessment that we are arming and assisting ISIS as a tool to implement regime change there?
I think, we're obviously arming the Free Syrian Army. We're arming a lot of groups over there, and maybe even elements of Al Qaeda. It's absolutely insane. It's history repeating itself. We did the same thing in Afghanistan against the Soviets, and they ended up being our bitter enemies years later. It's no way to really fight a war is to arm warlords. I think.
And as you're pointing out, that we've seen that going all the way back to the early days of Afghanistan. Once we have an objective, once we have targeted an enemy, whether it is Russia or whether it is Syria or whatever, we will ally ourselves, won't we, with any elements, no matter how bad they are, in order to achieve that purpose. Wouldn't you say that's kind of been the way the CIA has operated over the decades?
Without a doubt. I said earlier today that there's an old saying at the CIA that you can't buy an Afghan warlord, but you can certainly rent one. And that's what the CIA does. It'll rent a warlord or it'll rent an opposition group or a rebel group. And then when we lose the taste for that kind of war or insurgency, we walk away. And here we've armed and funded and radicalized people, and then we just walk away. Well, what do we think is going to happen? Eventually, they're going to turn against us. And we saw that in Afghanistan, and I think we're seeing the early stages of that in Syria right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we look at the situation that we have in Syria now, that they're starting to ramp up Afghanistan again as well. But I guess the key thing here that we see is the conflict that we are rapidly approaching. When you look at the CIA and you look at the intelligence communities, I mean, it seems like when we're looking at the Trump administration, there appear to be people like Mattis who want to try to focus on ISIS. But then there seem to be other individuals like McMaster, who was allied in the past with Petraeus, who are more focused on on getting regime change, getting Assad out of there, and they don't really care who they ally with. I mean, it's what is your take on the situation that's going on there at the moment?
I think regime change is a very dangerous policy, and it's because we're simply not good at it. We've never been good at it. We never seem to have a plan for what happens after the overthrow. Yeah, I remember sitting in a classified video teleconference this was in early 2003, just days before the invasion of Iraq, and the vice president was chairing the meeting, and it was Condoleezza Rice and George Tenet and high level people, the highest level. And I remember one of the senior national security officials on the conference said that when we crossed the border into Iraq, the Iraqi people were going to throw flowers at us. And I remember thinking, have we learned nothing from history?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to throw flowers on us if we invade their country. Well, it's the same thing if we overthrow Bashar al-Assad. And I'll add something about Bashar al-Assad, too. Whether we like his politics or not, Bashar al-Assad is the only thing standing between the Christian community in Syria and its annihilation. Yes. Fully 12% of Syrians are Christians, and they've had a long and successful run with the Assad family. If a rebel group takes over, whether it's the Nusra Front or the Free Syrian Army or, God forbid, ISIS, there's not going to be any love for the Christian community.
And we've already seen that in Afghanistan. And we've already seen that, John, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, elsewhere. We've seen the Christian communities who had been there for centuries as a small minority essentially vanish once our warlords took place there. I guess that's what they call nation building. But that hasn't worked. The asymmetric warfare has not worked in these areas, and yet we continue to do that. We continue to not learn anything whatsoever from this. And of course, when we look at Libya, I think that's probably a worst case scenario just recently that we had, turning it into, as Rand Paul said, an arms bazaar for Al-Qaeda.
Absolutely true. We're just not good at it. You look all over the region. Look at Syria and Libya and Egypt and Iraq and Afghanistan, Somalia, Yemen. There have been even uprisings in Bahrain, where we have one of the largest naval bases in the entire region. So we're just not good at this whole regime change, nation building thing. I think we shouldn't be in the business of doing it.
Absolutely. We got to take a quick break, but before we do, I want to kind of give me a feel for what you would like the American public to learn from the overarching takeaway that you would like them to learn from this book, The Convenient Terrorist. Joseph, let's go with you.
For me, I just want them to learn that, everything we're told by our government is not necessarily true. Especially, the last administration was, Obama's first, his first executive order was to close Guantanamo. Me and 9 soldiers went forward to his Justice Department to report abuses and deaths at Guantanamo, and he completely ignored it. And we did that while we were in the military. We took a huge risk. His administration was so corrupt. And he could have put an end to a lot of things that was going on, but he said he would, but in the end, he made it worse. He made it worse for whistleblowers that came out and spoke about it.
Yeah, he went after whistleblowers and journalists worse than any president we've ever had. He went after them more than all the other presidents combined from the 1917, this ancient Espionage Act that he had.
And no matter what all these polls say, people were sick of it and they wanted to blow the system up. And that's what they did.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got one more segment. Stay with us. We're going to be right back. The book is The Convenient Terrorist, and we're talking to 2 whistleblowers, Joseph Hickman and John Kiriakou.
Are you He is the political cartoonist of this era. Hands down. There's some other great ones out there that we post on Infowars.com daily. He's got a new book that he self-published. It's amazing. It's like a coffee table book. The 2016 Presidential Election Collection. It's good for adults. It's good for children. It's good for everybody. But this is how you wake somebody up. Usually people that are leftist or globalist minions, They won't watch a film. They won't even read a long book. This is the weapon. And when I saw this a few months ago, I said, get it, carry it. Graphics.com, G-R-R, graphics.com. And I'm not just saying this. He is the top cartoonist in the world, just from page views and Google searches. It's hands down, you were already probably in the top 2 or 3, but in the Trump era, you are numero uno.
And it all happened, it really turned around in 2016 because of the election. And my wife and I sat down in late 2015 and decided, you know what, I'm going to draw more cartoons. This is too important. And we're going to go all out this year. And we saw our support snowball.
I mean, when it comes to changing the world, bro, you're like The Voice. You're as big as InfoWars. You're as big as Drudge now. I mean, there's not much out there as big as this. You are now one of the main guns, brother. You are one of the main things defending this country.
And there are plenty of room for more guns. I always encourage young cartoonists to join the fray. And a lot of them are afraid because they don't want to lose their job. They don't want to lose their, they don't want to get trolled. And unfortunately, that's kind of the crucible that you're going to get hammered with when you start out. However, this is just too important. And what my cartoons are, Alex, I consider them visual alarm bells. Now, you get on your show and you get angry and you rant. My cartoons are a form of a visual rant, but they're visual alarm bells. And when that alarm bell goes off and they get heard, it's going to make some people angry. Well, did you turn that damn thing off? And other people are happy. Well, you're doing a great service. So you're waking us up to what's going on. The left says there's no such thing as a conservative cartoonist because you're not funny and you're status quo. Wrong. The status quo is now the liberal deep state, the globalist deep state, the collectivist deep state. And so all these things that used to be called conspiracy theories have now been revealed to be flat out conspiracies. And what Trump has done is really, he's beaten the snake out of their holes. So now we see them for what they are, and that in and of itself is quite a good accomplishment. More people are waking up, and your show and my cartoons, we're just trying to continue that momentum. And people are realizing, hey, we have something called a Constitution. We have to really wake up and not just go with like in my cartoon shows, these smiling lambs going brainwashed into the Great Maw of globalism. And they're using Islam as a tool to expedite that.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're talking to two whistleblowers, Joseph Hickman, John Kiriakou. Their book, The Convenient Terrorist. I want to get to John Kiriakou and ask him what his takeaway is. We just got it from Joseph Hickman. He said, don't trust what the government is telling you. He said, look at what Barack Obama did. He said he was going to shut down Gitmo. Joseph Hickman and other officers went there to talk to him, to tell him the abuse that they were seeing there. And, of course, he didn't do that. He made it far worse than it had been before. So I'm going to get to John Kiriakou, give him the final word here. But I just want to remind you that we have our 4th of July summer mega special that's now live at InfoWarsStore.com. Free shipping store-wide on everything, and 30 to 40% off on many of the most popular items. Things like Brain Force Plus, Super Male Vitality, 30% off both of those. Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine, Z-Shield, 30% off on both of those. And InfoWars Select Storable Food. Food that's going to last, it's packaged to last 25 years. It's resealable once you open it. It's all non-GMO, all made in the U.S., and you can get that 30 to 40% off plus free shipping. It's all part of our 4th of July summer sale, as well as Emmerich's Essentials Outdoor Pack, 40% off of that. This is while supplies last. It is a huge sale. Please take advantage of it. It's a win-win situation, something that helps you, and it helps to fund our operation, keep us as independent media. All right, let's go back to John Kiriakou, and I want to get that statement from you, and then a final comment from Joseph Hickman, if you'd like to make a statement. But what is the key takeaway, John, that you would like for people to get from this book, The Convenient Terrorist?
I think that the key takeaway is that the government is lying to us. As a matter of course, they lie to us because it's the only way that they can push their agenda through public opinion. And I think another thing, David, that's very important is that as Americans, we need to demand accountability on Capitol Hill.
Yes.
The congressional oversight committees are not really oversight committees. They're cheerleading committees. And we have to demand that they oversee the intelligence community like they were elected to do. Remember, our congressional representatives work for us.
Yes.
And if they don't like what we want them to do, then we can throw them out, as we should.
Let me add to that, too. It made me absolutely furious when I watched the Senate Intelligence Committee hearings, and it was when they were talking to James Comey, absolutely glossed over all of their illegal involvement. And already we had the FISA court declassify information saying the NSA, the FBI, had violated the law, had violated the Constitution. Never going to hear that from the Senate Intelligence Committee. It's always going to be politics and cheerleading for the intelligence community. You're exactly right. We cannot trust these people to act as overseers. And that's the thing that's really scary about this when we look at the proliferation of intelligence community and the tools that they have, the massive, complicated tools that they have to essentially look to see if their lying narrative is working with us and then to fine-tune it. I think that's one of the big untold stories going on here. Any final comments, Joseph Hickman?
No, I just think I really hope people read the book and really get a better understanding of the deep state and how dangerous they really are. And, what they're pulling over the American people's eyes.
Well, gentlemen, as whistleblowers, I have the utmost respect for you. You told the truth. You stood for the rule of law. You stood for ethics, and you did it at great personal risk. And, of course, John, you had to go to prison. Your book about how to do time like a spy. I hope that our audience doesn't need that. But, that's the sort of thing when I look at it. When we have a government that is willing to break the law, when we have a government that does not want to give people due process, and we're seeing this on everything, whether we're talking about civil asset forfeiture, whether you're dealing with the IRS or you're dealing with the FAA and you didn't get permission for your drone, they don't give you due process anymore. And that's the scary thing, to think about how this can morph into an area like we have seen foretold with the NDAA. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you for your service to this country. And the book, again, is The Convenient Terrorist by Joseph Hickman and John Kiriakou. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Wow, you're going to love the latest idea out of the EU. Ska Keller, a German member of the European Parliament and of the Green Party, said we should transplant entire villages from Syria to Germany, and that would encourage more migrants to enter Germany. Listen to these quotes. The idea of Syrian villages is only one possibility we can use. For example, if refugees don't want to go to a country alone that has no other refugees, people would rather go where compatriots already live, which makes integration and acceptance easier. Let's look at these three compatriots. From Paul Joseph Watson, Sweden, migrants viciously beat disabled man while calling him racist. 3 compatriot refugees attempted to steal a homeless man's wallet in a train station during an incident which took place last month. The handicapped man was kicked and punched and received a vicious uppercut as one of the migrants lectured him about war on Muslims and how all Swedes were racist. Now how's that for acceptance? You can read both articles now on Infowars.com. Rob J. reporting for Infowars.com and Infowars Nightly News.
Leading a frontal assault on the lies of the New World Order, it's Alex Jones. Waging war on corruption, it's Alex Jones, coming to you live from the front lines of the InfoWar.
Yeah, there's a storm on the loose, sirens in my head.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and of course, the breaking news that we've been covering at the beginning of the show as well is the continuing collapse of CNN. It's gotten unprecedented levels, the way they are collapsing. And as President Trump pointed out, CNN is not alone. We've also had Glenn Greenwald point this out in The Intercept, that they're not alone, giving a case study that you probably remember from just about 6 months ago, where they were telling us Putin is trying to hack our electric grid. In reality, all it was one laptop that was infected. Who knows how it got infected, but one laptop infected with a single virus, not connected to the grid in any way whatsoever. Not the local grid, not the U.S. national grid, but they blew that into a story to try to create panic, to try to push a Russian narrative. And CNN has now been caught at the end of last week with a deliberately fake story that was based simply on one single anonymous source. How many times have we seen this from the Washington Post, from the New York Times, by all of these jewel in the crown media that are supposed to be above reproach, that we're supposed to be able to believe everything that they do? And we just saw this recently with the Megyn Kelly and Tom Brokaw. They pulled him out of retirement to pontificate about how, you just have to believe everything that NBC tells you. Well, not exactly. And we have a contest here from, it's called CNN is Fake News, $200,000 in cash prizes. Get on TV with a CNN is Fake News sign or a T-shirt, $1,000 prize for anyone who's seen on TV with a sign, legible, or self-made T-shirt, $2,500 prize if you're seen on television and also heard to say CNN is fake news, Infowars.com is real. So that's another contest that's been put out there. This is what people need to understand. They need to not be intimidated, not be impressed by the brand name journalism. Because as we heard from James O'Keefe's undercover story today, they know inside CNN, they know that it is a witch hunt. They know that it's not true. And people like Zucker, who is running the organization, is telling them, hey, this is good for business. Let's forget these other stories. Let's get back on the Russia thing. This is starting to implode. They have jumped the shark, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're also going to take your calls. And the number, if you want to call in and talk about today's news, let's see. The number is 800-259-9231. That's 800-259-9231. Here's some stories that are kind of off on the side, but nevertheless important. They're not on the main thrust of today's information. A Harvard study proves unvaccinated children pose no risk. However, vaccinated children do. Very interesting. This is a Harvard study. This is a woman who has a PhD in immunology, and she writes, do unvaccinated children pose a higher threat to the public than the vaccinated? No, they don't. This is the herd immunity idea, which is really just a herd mentality. She said a person who is not vaccinated with IPV, DTaP, Hep B, and HIV vaccines due to reasons of conscience poses no extra danger to the public than a person who is. No discrimination is warranted, she points out. And she goes on to say studies of measles outbreaks in Quebec, Canada, and China attest to the outbreaks of measles still happen even when vaccination compliance is in the highest bracket. That's 95 to 97% or even 99%. And she gives sources. She said this is because in high vaccine responders, vaccine-induced antibodies wane over time because they're not the same as the antibodies you get when you have natural exposure. In other words, when you get measles as a child, and I felt like I had measles again last week when I had a fever for about 3.5 days. I had a high fever that just wouldn't go away. It was miserable, and it reminded me of when I had measles. But that gave me lifetime immunity. No matter how many vaccines I had, I would not have that lifetime immunity. And as a matter of fact, she points out there's been several incidents where patient zero was somebody who was vaccinated. Incidents in Quebec, Canada, and in New York. And we have covered these as well ourselves.
Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai is our guest. He's got 4 degrees from MIT and others as well, Patriot. And he's running for Senate against the fake Native American. Of course, they thought they'd found Indians, so they called the Native Americans Indians, but he's actually an Indian, so he's the real Indian running against the imposter. And he kind of used that as one of his slogans. Getting into the campaign to run against this lady, let's break down her record and what she's really up to and some of the things she's been involved in and what made you decide to go ahead and, a successful scientist, entrepreneur, to make you, throw your hat in the ring.
Well, Alex, I grew up in, I was originally born in India, and I came here. As you may know, Alex, India has a very oppressive caste system. So my parents had this very futuristic vision, and they made it out in there, and they came to America because the founders of this country had a very different vision for America, which was through your hard work, through your bravery, through your resilience, you created things, and that's what this country is about. Well, when I look, and the idea of the founders was that between us and our creator was not supposed to be monarchs or nobles, the priesthood. It was about us having a direct connection to our God and our creator, and that's what makes this country great. Elizabeth Warren and the self-serving elitists, Harvard and all these Ivy League institutions and the big institutions, fundamentally believe that they know better, Alex. And I know you know better. I know we know better. But that's a fundamental reason. So my journey as an entrepreneur, scientist, engineer has shown me that ultimately those people actually work for a living, produce things, entrepreneurs, people like yourself who create things are the ones that make this country great. People like Elizabeth Warren, the establishment politicians, the political hacks, they fundamentally add zero value. So I've been fortunate because of this great country, Alex, to have, accumulated wealth, been able to get educated. I could not have done that in the oppressive caste system of India. So I believe I owe something back. I love this country. And Elizabeth Warren is what I call the not so obvious establishment. When we look at the arc of political history, we have the establishment, the populist movement, those people on the streets wanting a better day for themselves and their family. Then you have the not so obvious establishment, which is what Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, these people represent. They speak a good game. As you talk about it, they're very, very clever with their PR, revolution, hope, change. But fundamentally, they want to suck out the populist movement and drive it back to the establishment. So as a student of systems, as a student of science, I fundamentally want to stop these guys. And more importantly, I want to drive a massive defeat to Warren. And I know I can do this right here in Massachusetts. And I think people like Elizabeth Warren need to be stopped. And I believe that I was, in many ways, my hardworking grandparents and my parents and this great country and the fathers of this country put me and gave me this opportunity at this point in history to stop someone like Warren to basically support this new American revolution.
You found it, the tip of the spear. It is the Alex Jones Show. And now, your host, David Knight.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're taking your phone calls. We got several people who have lined up already. We got one slot left on the phone lines here. I announced that in the last segment. If you want to squeeze in there or jump in as people fall off, the number is 800-259-9231. That's 800-259-9231. Real quickly before I go to our phone calls, Rob Dew said to me the other day, he says, I'm surprised you haven't really covered this story because we've got this tragic collision at sea between a U.S. military ship and a freighter, and they were on autopilot. At least the freighter was on autopilot. The destroyer is supposed to have not only all of these redundant navigation radar systems and commercial radar systems, but it's also supposed to have a human watch on the bridge at all time. And yet, here we have in the vast ocean, we have two ships not passing in the night, but bumping in the night. We have 7 sailors who died from this. Extensive damage to this very expensive ship. And the thing that concerns people is the idea of military preparedness. I mean, are these military systems? This is a military ship, so it's obviously going to be a target of hostility. A lot of people were kicking this back and forth on Twitter as this story was starting to develop. Was this a terrorist attack? Did somebody take over the other ship and drive it into that one? If they did, why wasn't the U.S. military ship able to detect that in time to do evasive maneuvers? What was going on with that? So people were passing this back and forth, trying to figure out, trying to make sense of this tragedy to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Because, as I said, the military ship, it's going to be a target of people who are trying to attack it. It isn't just a simple matter of having ships that are going to navigate on the ocean using autopilot. But, and so I don't really understand all the different issues that are involved there. Again, people who are in the military, people in the Navy are talking about those issues. I just look at it from the standpoint of an engineer who's concerned about self-driving cars, for example. If we can't have a couple of ships or even one ship, if it's simply the fault of this freighter who was on autopilot and just T-boned this military ship, even if it was just the one and the other people were not able to detect it in time for whatever reason, that's very troubling, to not make evasive maneuvers. Doesn't that argue against us being able to effectively do that with big semi-trailers? We're told by Mercedes and other companies that, hey, in a year or two, we've already done this. We've traveled across country with our Mercedes auto truck or semi-trailer. We don't need truck drivers anymore for long-distance stuff. We're going to be able to do that all with self-driving trucks. When you look at the traffic density on our highways versus the ocean, where you've got a couple of ships. I talked to Eric Peters, who does automobiles, and he says, they talk about this as being autopilot. That's a term they've lifted from airplanes. That simply isn't the case when you've got automobiles. I mean, you've got airplanes. They space the takeoff out. They make sure that they're operating different levels of altitude so that they're not in conflict with each other. You've got air traffic control that's monitoring it all the time. And they keep them vastly apart from each other, as you would expect in the ocean. And yet when you see something like this and the loss of life involved, what are we setting ourselves up for? And we've had a German company come out today saying, Tesla's stock took a hit because they said this stuff is not trustworthy. Why are they pushing this? They're pushing it because they have a different agenda. And if we really want to know what this agenda is, it's an agenda to take our freedom. We've talked about this many times. It is Agenda 21. And when you look at what is happening in places like London, for example, we see these types of things coming in. Frequently, they debut in the UK and London. Then they go to the next closest place, which is California. Not geographically close, but ideologically close. And what they're doing right now is they're demonizing diesel. We saw this being attempted by the EPA when I was the people that I was working with as I came here to InfoWars. They were looking at Lisa Jackson, who was then the head of the EPA, talking to then Congressman Markey from Massachusetts, now a senator. And they were trying to put out the idea that millions of people were dying. More people were dying from fine particulate matter that was coming out of diesel exhaust than were dying from cancer. A blatant lie that they were selling to the American people. And yet at the same time, they were saying that this was so deadly. What were they doing? Right there in North Carolina, where I was living, they were conducting experiments there with the EPA, with the university there. They were hooking people up to diesel exhaust. They had run ads for people who had respiratory and heart disease. They wanted to create an incident, and they were exposing them to levels that were 72 times greater than what the EPA said were available. Why are they demonizing diesel? Why are they talking about taxing drivers by the mile? We got the London mayor, Mayor Khan. London drivers are facing Britain's first pay-per-mile road charge and a radical plan to cut car journeys by 3 million a day. They do not want you moving around. They do not want you having private transportation. They want to capture you into their system that will be profited by a few well-connected corporations. And to get an idea of how this is going to break down, another one from London. A motorist, 27 years old. He was trying to get insurance for his car. He lives in a poor area, what we call public projects here in the United States. A relative was going to sell him a car, a Nissan, for 250 pounds. I guess that's maybe, about $400 here in the United States. He could not get anybody to insure him. He got two quotes. One of them was for 16,000 pounds. The other one was for 38,906 pounds. And they're going to charge this guy like $45,000 a year insurance on a car that's worth maybe $400 a year. So he can't drive. That's the tool they will use to ban your ability to move yourself around. And they're going to foist this autopilot technology that we've just seen here responsible for a collision at sea in the middle of the ocean. You can't even get this stuff to reliably work. That's the insanity that we're looking at here. All right, let's go to our callers here on hold. Let's go to Stephen in Washington. Stephen, go ahead. Thank you for holding. Stephen, Washington, you there? Hello, don't hear Stephen. All right, let's go to Stephen in Florida.
Hey, how you doing, David?
Hey, how you doing, Stephen?
Good. I wanted to comment. I know it's way after the fact now, but I have to comment on this. I listened to the entire pre-interview, if you want to call it that, debacle that Megyn Kelly had with Alex on the phone. And all anyone's got to do is listen to that phone conversation and then watch what she put out there on NBC to see that she just blatantly lied through her teeth.
Yes.
And so, I was thinking about all that, and I watched the, Alex with showing the whole thing and, you guys' commentary on that. So I have a gift that I want to give Alex in particular, since he subjected himself to this for the sake of the truth, but also to you guys with InfoWars, as well as everything you're representing in this battle with these liars. And it's what I call poetic justice. The poem I wrote, it's not real long. And Alex, I hope you're listening to this, and here's how it goes. A criminal of old time is making a comeback. Machine Gun Kelly is on the loose and now on the attack. Big Brother Mafia, double-speak deception, ministry of truth. Shoots off lies and allegations with absolute zero proof. The devil wears a dress, fiendish face framed in blonde hair. Medusa thrives on ignorance, luring into her lair. Megan Media mouthpiece, monumental manipulation. Evil enterprise evokes exaggeration. Gross Gorgon generating globalist gyration. Yellow-bellied yakking, youthful retardation. New World Order, NBC, never Trump machine. Killing truth and kissing Satan. Megan, you're his queen. Elevating, entertaining, egotistic error. Loving lies, lynching truth, Islamo-fascist terror. Low blow lady of the night, media whore and user. Yesterday's news, going down. Megyn Kelly, you're a loser.
All right. Thank you, Stephen, Florida. Yeah, the devil does wear Prada, right? Absolutely. All right. Thanks for the poem, Stephen. Let's go to O'Brien in Maryland. Go ahead, O'Brien.
I'm calling about the whole situation involving the riot that about to happen. For those who aren't aware, here we're about, I think, maybe like six or so minutes, 6 days until that thing happened. I would like your comment on that.
The riots that are about to happen? What do you? I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Nah, somebody said that basically on July the 2nd on Sunday there was the left is supposed to be holding some riots.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. A lot of times they've called for action, and their call to action doesn't materialize. Occasionally they do get a large turnout, like they did the Women Against Trump. I think the day or so after the inauguration. But most of them are basically non-entities. They don't have the kind of support that they would like for you to believe that they do. So many times they've called for some kind of action, and nobody turns up. That's one of the key things about Donald Trump. It's very rare to be able to turn out large crowds. It's extremely rare. I've covered politics all my life, and it's very unusual for politicians running for a statewide office or even national office to be able to turn out crowds. It's unprecedented to see the kind of crowds that Donald Trump gets. And so what you typically see happen is you see some hanger-ons, some counter-protesters. They get a lot of attention from the mainstream media. They move the cameras around in a way that gives them a larger appearance in terms of presence, and then they get very violent. And that's the thing that really makes their presence felt. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more phone calls.
Imagine the world without InfoWars. The globalists have already consolidated their power. They don't want people to have their own economies, their own choices. When you spread the links to Infowars.com news stories and our videos, when you tell friends, family, and neighbors about our free iPhone and Android apps, or send them a link to our daily podcast, you were involved in a revolutionary act against tyranny. It was George Orwell that said, in a world of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. That's why I spend a lot of time trying to not just innovate news and analysis and our fight against the globalists, but also thinking about how we're able to fund our operation. That's so critical to prosecute an information war. And I've spent 7 years off and on trying to get a big national brand that's already trusted to let us private label an entire line of personal care products that's organic and high quality. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have private labeled it, And it is the exact same product, just the name is different, Emmerich's Essentials, and it's on average 20% off what it would be in stores buying it directly from InfoWarsStore.com. On top of that, if you sign up for auto ship, you get an additional, out of the gates, 25% off on this product. Emmerich's Essentials is all about personal care, hygiene, not getting skin cancer, not getting bit by a bunch of bugs and, gnats and mosquitoes. It's all there. The body wash, the shampoo, the deodorant, the mouthwash, all of it is truly game-changing. BOA spray, totally organic, essential oils, works a lot better than the toxic chemical systems that are out there, and it is comparable in price, and again, is concentrated. The deodorant is amazing, high quality, doesn't have the aluminum garbage in it, totally natural, works great. SPF 30 face and body lotion sunscreen, unscented. This is exciting because so many of the so-called sunscreens that are out there are toxic. As everyone knows, I'm obsessed with win-wins. 20% off what it is retail, because we cut out the middleman. And then additionally, if you sign up for auto ship, out of the gates, 25% off that, because I want you to try these products. I want you to love these products. I want to have a deeper relationship with you in a 360 win, a non-zero sum game, where you get high quality, you get value, and you repeat order something you need every month. And then we're able to secure our funding into the future to not just stay at the level we're at, but to grow in the face of enemy attacks. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, and you'll find Emmerich's Essentials. Alex Jones here to tell you about how you can help spread liberty worldwide while also enjoying what I have found to be the best tasting 100% organic coffee on the planet. For more than a decade, my favorite coffee has come from the high mountains of southern Mexico, where the Chiapas farmers grow their unique shade-grown Arabica beans. We have now managed to secure these sought-after beans in a highly customized blend. Discover and try a bag of the Patriot Blend 100% organic coffee at InfoWarsLife.com. This coffee gives you a long, smooth pick-me-up for hours without the headaches and heartburn that so many other coffees give me personally. Hands down, this is my favorite coffee, and it's taken us years to secure connections directly to the Chiapas Mexican farmers. Drop by the site today, order a bag or two, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Available in original or with our immune support infusion blend. You will be supporting a free press, all the while enjoying a truly great-tasting cup of my favorite coffee. Available at InfoWarsLife.com.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're taking your phone calls. If you want to call in, that number is 800-259-9231. We've been talking today, of course, about the exposure and meltdown of CNN, their fake Russian narrative. We've also talked about Nikki Haley and McMaster's and other neocons inside the Trump administration pushing a war with Russia, not just using it as a narrative to try to stymie the Trump administration or to try to cover up the Obama administration's illegal involvement using the intelligence community, the law enforcement community as part of their political campaign. Highly illegal. That's the big story, as Rand Paul and others have pointed out. But even going beyond that, Nikki Haley, McMaster's, others in the Trump administration, pushing regime change in Syria, not fighting ISIS, and getting right to the brink of actual war with Russia. That's the danger that we're looking at here. So if you want to call in and make some comments, we're taking phone calls here. Let's go to Tucker in Nebraska. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, Dave, how you doing?
Doing good.
Hey, I was just thinking on that Russia deal. With all the collusion and everything they've tried to prove against our president, why do they not just go wholeheartedly after Hillary and then let the real Russian collusion unravel itself? Put one rat against the other, and watch them all squeal on one another. I mean, none of them have any honor. Yeah. And if they could do that, I believe that the real story will unravel itself through sources of news media such as yourselves, and the people could get the real story of what's going on, and these people could finally be brought to justice, because I think we're just all getting sick and tired of watching this story continue with this hope that these people are going to be brought to justice. I mean, these people try to bring down the United States of America. That is treason.
Yes. Well, you know, there actually may be a case where they're going to be pitting one rat against the other, because we've got James Comey saying that Loretta Lynch told him to call it a matter, tried to shut it down. So basically what he did in his testimony was he called her out for trying to obstruct justice. And Judge Napolitano reported on this a couple of days ago, said that former Attorney General Lynch could face up to 5 years in prison. We've had a couple of Democrats come out. I think it was Adam Schiff, and I forget who the other one was. Was it Nancy Pelosi? When they were interviewed, they said, well, it actually makes us kind of queasy to see that. I bet it does. Dianne Feinstein, yeah, it made her queasy. It made Adam Schiff queasy, and it should make them queasy because she broke the law. Now, if they get the two of them going, we've got Comey, who's testified multiple times. He's a leaker. He's testified, contradicted himself under oath multiple times. And so, yeah, they could start getting these people turned one against the other. I certainly hope that's going to be the case. Even Hillary should still be in play. She was never tried and found innocent. We had somebody who has now been exposed as a political operative, using his office as director of the FBI as a political operative. That's the real story here. We have the FISA court saying that the FBI and the NSA violated the law. They released, declassified their decision so the American public would pay attention. For the most part, they're not. We're reporting this, but they're not getting any traction. Drudge reported it. It was a Circa report that went into detail as to what was released, and Drudge put that up. We've talked about that multiple times. And yet, for the most part, the mainstream media is not looking at the crimes of law enforcement and the intelligence community violating the law and using their powerful position as political operatives. We've got Senator Grassley and others who are looking into this. So this thing is not over yet. Yes, people may be getting tired of it, but I think it started to turn now. We've got the Democrats coming back and saying, hey, we're talking about this too much. We got CNN saying we're talking about this too much, and we're telling lies, and people are on to the lies that we're telling them. So they're starting to back off. This is the time we need to move ahead, and we need to expose their criminal actions. What do you think, Tucker?
Yeah, well, I agree with you, but, how do I, as a private citizen, go about doing that? What can I do? I think a lot of us are just lost in the realm of how do we put ourselves into this? I mean,
well, let me tell you, they do follow what you do on social media. When you pass this stuff around and you pass it to your friends or whatever, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, they're looking at that, and it does make an effect with your friends as well. But they're looking at that when they talk about the fact that they are not recording your conversations, that they're more interested in the metadata. They want to know what the hive mind is thinking. Is their narrative working, or are they in trouble? And if you put that out there, that is a drop, but it's a drop in a bucket that is filling up in a flood. So it's very important for you to pass that information around, pass those stories around, help to wake people up. That's an important thing. That's why they follow the hive mind, why they try to shut down social media. So don't let them do that to you. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more phone calls.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
This July 4th, we're having some of the biggest sales ever. Our incredible nootropic Brain Force Plus, 30% off, and now with 20% more in each bottle. Super Mel Vitality, sold out for months. Concentrated herbs that have absolutely changed my life and so many others, 30% off as well. So again, I want to thank you all for your support. I want to thank you for your prayers. You have changed the world, and I want to encourage you to continue to change the world and to accelerate your resistance.
The struggle in the DNC fraud lawsuit continues. You've had the current counsel for the plaintiffs request that the judge provide witness protection. That notion was rejected despite 3 mysterious deaths of potential witnesses in the case: Seth Rich, Sean Lucas, and Barrington Wisenant Jr. There are also stalwarts in the justice system that are trying to have this case dropped entirely. despite the obvious glaring issues that the DNC has had over the course of the last 2 years. While the lawsuit represents Bernie Sanders supporters who feel they have been wronged by the DNC, Bernie Sanders has fallen silent on the issue. Donald Trump tweeted out this weekend, Hillary Clinton colluded with the Democrat Party in order to beat crazy Bernie Sanders. Is she allowed to collude? Unfair to Bernie. So now Donald Trump has done more to raise awareness for the DNC fraud lawsuit than Bernie Sanders has, who actually is the one that had the election stolen from him. Why is Bernie Sanders silent on the issue? Maybe I guess he's busy with being investigated by the FBI for bank fraud. For Infowars.com, this is Owen Schroyer.
It's more critical than ever to recommit to financially support the broadcast and to get great products back in exchange, a 360 win. Emmerich's Essentials Outdoor Special. We're talking our non-nano zinc, high-powered sunscreen, along with Emmerich's Essentials bug spray that's totally organic and natural and works way better than chemical brands I've personally used. Help fund this organization that you know has been successful fighting tyranny on every front. We have private labeled it, and it is the exact same product, just the name is different. Emmerich's Essentials. It's on average 20% off. On top of that, if you sign up for auto ship, you get an additional 25% off. Emmerich's Essentials is all about personal care, hygiene, not getting skin cancer, not getting bit by a bunch of bugs and mosquitoes. It's all there. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, and you'll find Emmerich's Essentials.
Talk show host is Alex Jones. He's a conspiracy theorist.
Radio talk show host Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
Jones is the wildly popular conspiracy theorist.
Radio talk show host and conspiracy theorist Alex Jones.
Deeply, I think, racist.
I just got called racist by MSNBC.
I don't want that man to have a gun.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
The Alex Jones Show. Watch the free stream live at Infowars.com/show.
You gotta have the will.
But we can't get the facts. They just tell us what they think we ought to know.
You found it, the tip of the spear. It is the Alex Jones Show with David Knight.
Weapon system, national defense.
That's right, the thing that pushes our government, the military-industrial complex. They're about to get another war in Syria. We're going to talk to our callers about that and other issues. Going to go back to them in just a moment. If you want to call in, the number is 800-259-9231. Before we go back to the callers, I just want to remind you that we have initiated our 4th of July summer mega specials. That's now live at InfoWarsStore.com. Free shipping store-wide. Let me repeat that. Free shipping store-wide. And in addition to that, 30% off on a wide variety of our most popular products, things like Brain Force Plus, Super Male Vitality, Survival Shield X2, that's our nascent iodine, Z-Shield, all of those, 30% off. Then select storable food, 30 to 40% off, plus free shipping. That's a huge savings because that's very heavy to ship that. That's a 25-year storage life, shelf life of the product. It's non-GMO, made in America, packaged with resealable packaging. So once you open it, you can still reseal it there for a while. But that is something that gives you a backup for any kind of a natural or man-made emergency. It also gives you some insulation against price spikes and shortages in food. That's something to take advantage of, prepare for yourself, prepare for your family. 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select storable food and free shipping. Also, Emmerich's Essentials Outdoor Pack. This is part of our new Emmerich's Essentials cosmetics, I guess. Well, these are actually things. The Outdoor Pack is like suntan lotion, bug repellent that is natural, does not have highly toxic chemicals in it like DEET. That is 40% off of retail. Also, Living Defense, 20% off. While supplies last, take advantage of that and the free shipping store-wide as part of our 4th of July summer mega specials that have now kicked off live at InfoWarsStore.com. All right, let's go to Stephen in California. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hey, David, I just had a few quick things I wanted to point out. The first one I didn't know if you guys had covered was this last Saturday, the Proud Boys and We the People Rising went to a Maxine Waters town hall event. I didn't know if you guys had seen that at all.
No, I didn't say. What happened?
We showed up, we protested the event, and apparently scared her so bad that she stayed inside the building after the event, afraid to come out for 20 minutes straight, which was pretty hilarious to see. Her staff kept trying to juke us out, bringing cars to each side of the building, but we had every single exit surrounded, waiting for her, waiting to confront her. And when she finally came out, she put a bag over the window. She ran to the car, put a bag over the window, and then sped off as fast as she could. It was beautiful to see.
Well, you know, that Maxine is quite a character. If we didn't have her, we'd have to invent her, wouldn't we? I mean, she's always good for a laugh, Maxine Waters. But there's a lot of people in the Democrat Party that take her seriously. Well, thanks, Stephen, for doing that in California. Let's go to Stephen in Arizona. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hey, what's going on, David? Hey, I wanted to talk about, I see where Nikki Haley said they're not going to stand by and let a government spray chemicals on their people. Well, I live in Tucson, and they're spraying the hell out of me with their chemtrails down here.
That's right.
So why don't they shut that down before they do anything else?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Good point. Yeah, they're spraying the chemicals on us. They spray chemicals in our water, too, don't they? But then they tell us, oh, it's good for us. You know, all that fluoride they put in there, that's great for us. But, you know, that is, I find that very concerning. Did you hear what we talked about earlier today? The fact that, you know, of course, when we look at Seymour Hersh's report about what happened, it appears that it's a totally phony event, just like it was 4 years ago. We're disappointed to see that Trump launched those missiles. We talked about that a great deal at the time. Seymour Hersh goes back and looks at it. But as we look at that in context, we see that that was right at the time, and we pointed it out, that McMaster's replaced Flynn in the National Security Council. And today we also learned that Flynn was somebody who had gotten the ire of Andrew McCabe, the number 2 at the FBI at the time, because he had sided with an individual who had worked in the intelligence community for quite some time, went to work under Andrew McCabe at the FBI, and then started getting negative reviews. She alleged that there was sexual harassment involved in that, sexual discrimination. And Michael Flynn took the unusual step of going to bat for her, writing letters of recommendation for her, getting the ire of Andrew McCabe, who began investigating her personally, and then 2 years later began investigating in violation of the law because he had no search warrant, investigating General Flynn and getting him thrown out of office with allegations inside the Trump administration. Of course, that is a direct violation even of the powers that they presume to hold under the Patriot Act, because they are prohibited from following an American citizen on American soil. They can only look at foreign citizens on foreign soil. Otherwise, they need a search warrant. And so they violated the law. The FISA court has talked about that. What do you think about everything that's happening with the Syrian situation with Nikki Haley and others? Are you concerned about that?
Oh, yeah. What we got with McCain head over there again? Are they getting ready to launch another false flag for Trump?
I'm sure he will. You know, the interesting thing, we didn't talk about today, but there was a story that we didn't cover. John McCain is basically having all the Clinton Foundation donors come over to his McCain Foundation. What a surprise. You're there in Arizona. You're not surprised, are you?
No.
Yeah.
No, that's very sad. So
yeah,
he better go to sleep, and Shane McCain needs to get down. So we'll talk to you later, David.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen in Arizona. Let's go to Johnny B. in Missouri. Go ahead, Johnny B.
Hey, afternoon, David.
Hey.
I'm on the torture subject.
Yes.
You know how everybody shares the term flashback, blowback.
Mm-hmm.
From the victims of the torture, you know, it's just par for the course. From an invading entity, you're going to create enemies in the invading country.
That's right.
Country you're invading.
That's right. You activate people who were not enemies before, and you harden the resistance when you do this type of stuff. That's one of the aspects, yes, that we didn't really talk about that much. Go ahead.
Is missing, and we really, as Americans, we need to really start talking about this subject. And I'm calling it overspray. Okay, and what I'm talking about is where these terror programs go out with any government initiative. You're going to create these cottage industries. So we've got all this industry created behind torture. Unbelievable. Okay, so now now that they've got the industry, they've got to find customers. So they bring it home domestically. So we've got our law enforcement torturing the inmates.
Yes.
By permission, hey, guys, they're guilty. They done something wrong or they wouldn't be in there.
That's right.
Folks, look up Schaefer Cox, C-O-X.
Mm-hmm.
Young man that come out back in 2009. Very, very charismatic, Christian-centered, people-gathering speaker. Justice Department made him disappear. He's 27 years. He's got a daughter. He might have got to see her in visitation.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. So, and that's what I mean by overspray. Because we're creating this industry, our troops go out there and they're taught how to do it, so they come home and it'll work real good right here, man. Let's torture this guy a little bit, and maybe we can find out where he got his drugs from.
That's right. When we talk about the military-industrial complex, of course, what they have done is created a police state torture complex. The militarized police state that we have here. That's a whole profit center for them.
And the only reason that this edifice to stupidity exists is because the American people are not in their proper position in this government overseeing our employees. Can I share a website, David, please?
Sure, go ahead.
TacticalCivics.us. It's so appropriate, man.
And what does that cover?
Civics. We're covering American civics that hasn't been taught in this country in probably 180 years.
It's very important because when we look at what's happening in this country, and we talk about the fact that we have the CIA involved in illegal programs and they violate the law at will, and that has spread, it's metastasized to our law enforcement. We got the Department of Defense bringing in MRAPs. Remember all that? That was the big rage, talking about that, how they were weaponizing the police departments, how they were militarizing them, how they were starting to operate as an occupying force. And, of course, Joe Biggs and I went to one of the asymmetric warfare centers where they had built an American city where they could practice these types of tactics. We have to understand that if they're going to militarize the police and do this largely because the military-industrial complex needed another profit center, and now, of course, they've also restarted the Cold War, so they get back their long-range bombers, their long-range missiles. That's a very big profit center. They've got that going as well, in addition to their entire terror industry that they're operating on. But they're doing that in violation of our due process over and over again. We don't have any rights when it comes to the massive amounts of law. Most of the law is set up as bureaucratic regulation. And once they do it as bureaucratic regulation, they can say that you're in violation of a civil law. You get no presumption of innocence. You get no trial by jury. You don't get a trial at all. As a matter of fact, they don't even have to accuse you of anything. We see this over and over again with civil asset forfeiture and the drug law. They just take whatever they wish from you because no longer do we have the kinds of Sixth Amendment protections. And they do that under the legal fiction of saying that these are not criminal laws, they're civil laws. And, of course, I'm sure that's probably something that you address at your site, Tactical Civics.
Man, we are doing our level best to get the American people to realize that we've got an integral part to occupy, a place to occupy in our government.
Yes.
We haven't been there in like 180 years, guys. Come on. But, David, there's one thing that you're missing there in your overlook of that situation is the subversion. Because now that we've got to this point to where our federal services have stepped outside of any kind of oversight.
That's right.
And they've become a global belligerent. I mean, they are totally belligerent globally.
Yes.
I haven't seen any evidence of a friend they have anywhere on the field.
That's right.
Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
So the only thing they need to do to keep this mechanism operating efficiently or semi-efficiently is subversion.
Yes.
False flag attacks, just one little piece of information either not shared at the wrong time, or fraudulent information to begin with. And that's all they got to do. The system will take care of itself because so many people are ingrained. Well, I got to follow this rule, man.
That's right. And once you have some kind of a false flag attack or something that maybe is real. And then they use that to panic the public and to say, well, now we need to implement these systems that we've already put in place. Absolutely. Great call. Thank you, Johnny. Let's go to Joshua in Ohio. Go ahead.
All right. Can you hear me, David?
I hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Basically, I want to talk about getting out ahead of this next false flag. We got the White House warning about how, this is going to happen. And
yes, isn't that amazing?
We should get out ahead of this. We got Nikki Haley. Every time this woman opens her mouth, it's an embarrassment. Maybe we could start some kind of campaign of fire Haley and hire somebody like Tulsi Gabbard that's actually been over there to Syria
yes.
and talked to Assad
yes.
and knows the people on the ground and has seen exactly how we're arming these radical Sunni jihadis, and that's what I call them. You can call them ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Al-Nusra or whatever you want to call them, but they're Sunni jihadis that we should never be aligned with. These should not be our allies. And then our enemies are the ones that are fighting the radical Sunni jihadis, and it's backwards. And then I started looking into Tillerson and the people who were involved in introducing him to Trump after this last chemical attack or whatever it was. And you got names popping up like Condoleezza Rice and Stephen Hadley, he's the director at Raytheon, Robert Gates, James Baker, and even more interesting, Rex Tillerson's chief of staff is a lady by the name of Margaret Peterlin. Now, Peterlin, for the last 2 years, she worked at a company called XLP Capital there with her employer, Matthew Stack. Now, these two individuals are involved in making the cyber warfare programs that were given to the CIA to mimic foreign hackers to make it look like, for their target that it came from, say Russia.
The type of stuff that we saw in Vault 7. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that came out in Vault 7. And we got a lot of people behind the scenes that I think we really need to be beating the drum and exposing because, how long is this neocon globalist agenda that's been going on for decades? How long is this going to last?
Well, I agree. And I was very concerned about Rex Tillerson at the beginning because I knew that he was for the phony climate change stuff, and he did fight for that. But Trump eventually shut him down. And I think it's important that we realize that we can still have an effect on Trump. That's why I said before, if you're a Trump supporter, you need to remind President Trump what candidate Trump knew, what candidate Trump said, what candidate Trump had tweeted about for years. You need to remind him about the futility of these regime changes. You need to remind him how the American government lied to us to get us involved in Iraq. And as you point out, take a look at Nikki Haley. Perhaps she was there as an olive branch to some of the establishment Republicans, but we need to make sure that she is contained. And I think, do whatever you can. Talk on social media. Send stuff to Donald Trump. I think that he is an honest person, even when we disagree with him. I think he is open to hearing these types of suggestions. If he hears them in massive numbers from people, I think he will listen. He did do the right thing with climate change. It took a while, and I was concerned about it because the pressure that's being put on him by his daughter, by Rex Tillerson, but he did the right thing. He got out of the Paris Accord. And so the people who are in the Trump administration who want to do the right thing, and Donald Trump who knows what the right thing is but is getting pressured from the other people, if we don't pressure him, he's only going to get pressured from one side, and that's going to possibly turn him around. So it's very important for you to speak out. I absolutely agree with what you had to say, but I think we can all play a part in this. Thank you, Joshua. Let's go to Russell in Alaska. Go ahead, Russell.
Yeah, hi, David.
Hi.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yep, hold on one second. I'm sorry.
We got you.
I'm calling about the VA. I know that there's a lot of important things going on right now with Russia and, North Korea and all these other places. But one of the things that we're not talking about is Veterans Affairs. And a article just came out on the 23rd at militarytimes.com talking about them wanting to redo the veterans' disabilities and everything else like that. And I don't know if am I still here?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay. And they're talking about rechanging the entire system. Well, there are a lot of veterans that rely heavily on Veterans Affairs and everything that they get from the VA. And now we're talking about, oh, well, it's unsustainable. In the article, it talks about being unsustainable. Well, that's great.
Hang on. We got to take a quick break. We're going to hang on through the break. We'll come right back to you, let you finish up with that. We'll be right back.
This is one of the most amazing stories I've seen in years to take us behind the curtain of fake corporate news. CNN's famous in 1991 for saying they were hit with a Scud missile in Tel Aviv with nerve gas. They were in CNN Center in Atlanta. Everybody knows about that because they don't want other citizens being there, you know, jumping on camera saying things, basically. So they do it from their studios, and then they claim they're out there on the ground. Well, this is different. This is getting a fake demonstration together with a bunch of signs they hand out to have, quote, Muslims say, let's come together, we're sorry for the terror attack. But that's not really happening or going on, so they have to produce it. It's a PR event. So Mark Antro, he's on Twitter at markantro.com. You're there in London. Give us your overall view of what's happening in the world, what you're witnessing unfold, and the fact that your story now is in hundreds of news sites. CNN's responded saying, okay, we did stage it, but it was a real demonstration. Cernovich predicted this. They'd say, oh, we did stage it, but we went and found real people to come be part of it. Well, I mean, who knows if they'd stage this? What won't they stage, Mark?
I mean, I've just lost for words. I mean, if we have some context, weekend before last, ISIS put out the threat over Ramadan that it was going to be a holy month of war. Following the Westminster attacks and the Manchester attacks, people are saying people in London aren't scared and that we're carrying on as normal. We're not. The media is portraying one thing and people are feeling very, very different. So I suppose that's my initial take. To your point around CNN faking the narrative, I mean, it's just morally bankrupt as far as I'm concerned. But at the very beginning of the clip, you'll notice we've got, I think her name's Becky, setting up the scene with CNN. So, I mean, you clearly see Becky lining the shot up. You'll see BBC, who are next, start waving and setting up the scene with them, telling them to get into shot. And this is what gets me. So the scene's about to go live. I'm not sure if you've got the audio there. But Becky starts the scene after setting it up, a whole false pretense, and she opens up and her opening line is, "This is a wonderful scene here." And so you hear me laugh, and I go, "That's because you've put the scene together." And the BBC director laughed with me. I mean, they know it's fake. So while CNN are saying, yes, these are sincere Muslims, they're against ISIS, I'm not disputing that for a second. But what I'm saying is how false the pretense it is, how staged it was. And for Becky to stand there and go, "This is a poignant scene." It's a poignant scene because your script is a poignant scene. It's not a poignant scene because that's the truth and reality. And that I think, to me, that's a real issue here.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're going to go back to our callers here in just one moment. Real quickly, I'll remind you that we have our 4th of July summer mega special now active at InfoWarsStore.com. Free shipping store-wide. We have 30 to 40% off major product lines, especially our select storable food. 30 to 40% off plus free shipping. Also, Emmerich's Essentials Outdoor Pack, 40% off retail. Check out the specials that we have here as part of our 4th of July summer special and look at the free shipping store-wide that is active now through the 4th of July as part of our special. And let's go back to Russell in Alaska. Russell, you were talking about Veteran Affairs. Of course, we've had a lot of problems with the VA, not serving veterans very well. You said they've got major changes in the pipeline. You're concerned that maybe there's too much that's changing. Is that your concern?
Yeah, that is my concern. And the name of the actual article is from the militarytimes.com. It's VA Chief, Time to Rethink Disability System, the current setup not sustainable. My problem is that you can sustain EBT, you can sustain welfare, but you can't sustain a system for people that wrote a blank check for their country.
Yeah, I understand.
I think that's wrong, and you need to stop looking at our veterans to keep taking hits. I'm a veteran myself. My wife's a veteran. I'm actually sitting at the Anchorage VA right now because she's in an appointment. But you have veterans that are literally 100% disabled that cannot do anything anymore. And you're talking about lowering what they get or making it more difficult for them to get things.
I think you're gonna. I think you're gonna find that Trump is very sympathetic to that. I think you've got a big advocate in Trump. There may be some people inside the administration who are pushing other policies, but like we saw with climate change, even though he had Secretary of State and his daughter pushing to stay in the Paris Agreement, he ultimately did the right thing. So I think he's going to be on your side on that. But that's something that you're going to need to speak up, and you're going to need to make sure that President Trump sticks with candidate Trump. I think that's a very important point to make. I want to get to some of the other people that are on hold. Thank you, Russell. Good luck with that. Let's talk to Wake Up 1442. Go ahead, Wake Up.
I wanted to talk about the FBI has become criminalized, that the CIA has taught them their gladio techniques and used them to affect the political elections. That there's one operative, Bill Fulton, who was a FBI undercover operative who got a job with Joe Miller's campaign in Alaska and handcuffed a reporter to disgrace Joe Miller's campaign, so he lost. And that same Bill Fulton is the one who threatened to kill Schaefer Cox. And prosecutor Steve Schrocky told the jury that they could listen to hours and hours of tapes and they would not find anywhere where Bill Fulton threatened to kill Schaefer Cox, but there's on the YouTube, there are several places where you can see there that Bill Fulton is threatening to kill Schaefer Cox, and that is why Schaefer Cox was arrested, because he was trying to flee the country, because he didn't know that Bill Fulton was an FBI undercover operator, but he knew that Bill Fulton had told him that he would kill him if he showed up for his trial.
Well, there's a lot of information that's coming out about the FBI. Not only did we see what Comey did in terms of giving a pass to Hillary Clinton and the many other things, acting as a leaker. This is a guy who came to the FBI position from being on the board of HSBC, an organization that was convicted multiple times, even after they'd been put on probation and given a fine. They did it again, laundering money for drug cartels, for terrorist organizations. So they pick a guy from the board of directors of that organization to become an FBI director. Then we learned today that Andrew McCabe appeared to have a personal vendetta against Mike Flynn. And we know that the FISA court has said that the FBI violated the law in terms of exposing individuals. So we know that they're operating in a political mode. I would even suggest the situation with Christopher Steele and the dirty dossier. James Comey appears to have involvement in that, and people in Congress are taking a look at it. Thank you so much. That's it for today's show. Join us again tomorrow. Alex Jones will be back. InfoWars Nightly News tonight at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
This is GCN, the Genesis Communications Radio Network.
To celebrate this July 4th, I want to ask everybody to redouble their efforts to spread the word and to take action against tyranny. We have store-wide free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com through July 4th. Deep Earth Pure Iodine X2, now back in stock, 30% off. Z-Shield, our newest product out of the gates, 30% off, because it's so amazing and I want you to try it. So for myself, the InfoWars crew, and my family, I want to wish you all a wonderful 4th of July, and I want to thank you all for your support.
Every morning before I start writing or shooting a video, I take 2 capsules of Brain Force for a sustainable burst of energy. This is, without question, the most powerful nootropic I've ever taken, and it comes without any of the crashes or the jitters associated with energy drinks. It's additive-free, nothing artificial. It's Brain Force Plus. Read thousands of 5-star independent reviews right now and get your Brain Force Plus at InfoWarsLife.com.
Leading a frontal assault on the lies of the New World Order, it's Alex Jones. Big Brother, mainstream media, show.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we look out at the week before us, I cannot describe to you the amount of excitement I have in my heart. We are seeing the criminals that have hijacked this nation and that have been preying on the American people be exposed on a minute-by-minute basis. And as the curtain is pulled back, just be prepared for absolute nightmares to be discovered. The establishment are soulless, Satanists, child molesters, sadists, mercenaries, scum, dishonorable trash. And Zucker of CNN, he should be hauled up on criminal charges of sedition, racketeering, creating false narratives to remove an elected sitting president. It's called espionage. Espionage carried out at the behest of the multinational combines that are so ruthless in their ivory towers in London, in Paris, in New York, and other areas like Los Angeles. They believe they're invincible. This is a big broadcast today coming up live with David Knight. And because the news is so huge, I was going to take a few days off of my children, really a staycation to take care of errands and things like that. I'm going to go ahead and still come in. Knight will host most of the broadcast, but I'm going to pop in and also take some special reports just because